Coming up on Bloomberg this weekend, President Trump ratchets up the economic pressure on Iran.
Pretty soon I'll be declaring the Hormuz Strait a territory of the United States.
But Iran is fighting back, striking more ships in the strait. Who will blink first?
New this morning, the Prime Minister of India laying out big economic ambitions in an Independence Day speech.
I want to shake up the country a bit. I also want to shake up the strength of the nation.
His plans for AI, tech, and banking.
Plus, Bloomberg goes up close with an autonomous drone swarm.
It's very futuristic and highly unreliable tech at the moment.
What it means for the future of warfare and human involvement in picking targets.
Welcome to Bloomberg This Weekend. We're coming to you live from Bloomberg World Headquarters in New York. And what's different here? I'm Joe Mathieu alongside Carol, Massar, David, and Christina finally got a day off. Good morning. What a treat to meet you here.
Well, it's great to see you and work with you again. And good for David and Christina to get some time off.
Yes.
It's been a busy summer, not a quiet one.
Smack dab in the middle of August. This is when everyone's supposed to be at the beach. There's supposed to be no news. And I hope that's the case for the two hosts of this program. By the way, Lisa Mateo is still here to keep us under control. But I'll tell you what, Carol, there's a lot going on. This is not your typical August.
I have to say, every time I come into a weekend, I think about the war that started just going into a weekend, and here we are, 6 months later, and it continues. And it does feel like we're going to get into a little bit later on this maybe being a forever war, and I think it's something we need to think about. Markets, it seems like they continue to look through it on a lot of days.
And a third straight week of gains in the S&P 500 with a lot of turmoil under the surface. We're going to dig into that coming up in the next couple hours.
Not always an easy trade.
That's right.
A very good morning, everybody. Let's get a check, though, on some of the headlines. Over to Lisa Mateo. Lisa, good morning.
You got it. Good morning, guys. Well, President Donald Trump, he downplayed the toll on American sailors enduring nearly 9 months at sea on the USS Abraham Lincoln. He spoke with reporters before flying to New York for an event.
That ship is moving right now, or very shortly, and it's being replaced with another very similar ship.
Has the deployment's gone on too long?
No. Not nearly long enough. Thank you, everybody.
Concerns have escalated about mental health and supply issues aboard the aircraft carrier supporting U.S. operations against Iran. Now, according to multiple reports, the Pacific-based aircraft carrier USS George Washington has begun heading toward the Middle East as a replacement. Coming up later this hour, one of the journalists behind the reporting of the Lincoln will join us live. Well, at that event on Long Island that was attended by the president, Trump acknowledged that he's used the U.S. military, quote, a little bit more than I wanted to. He jokingly added that he would soon declare the Strait of Hormuz a territory of the United States. The president also used a rally to praise a new crime report.
Today, I'm thrilled to announce that the FBI has just released a new uniform crime report showing that in 2025, we achieved the single largest reduction in violent crime in American history.
Well, in other news, the lawyers for Luigi Mangione are looking to dismiss the New York State murder case against him, citing double jeopardy. It comes after the 28-year-old admitted he killed United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson in 2024. He also changed his plea to guilty to 2 federal stalking charges. One of Mangione's attorneys spoke outside federal court in Manhattan.
New York law does not permit a person to be prosecuted and punished twice for the exact same crime under a statute that governs successive prosecutions.
Now, U.S. Attorney Jamie McDonald described Mangione's crimes as calculated and premeditated. Mangione, he read a statement where he said he planned the shooting after years of severe pain from a broken back and obstacles in dealing with the healthcare system. The Thompson family, well, they have released a statement after Mangione's plea change saying, quote, while nothing will ease the pain of losing him, we are grateful that the federal justice system has held the person responsible for this heinous act accountable. The Manhattan District Attorney's Office says it has no intention of dropping the state case, with the trial scheduled to start on September 8th. Joe and Carol, it's interesting to see all this unfold yesterday.
Incredible stuff, absolutely. And to have no deal is pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
Lisa, great to meet you back here on a Saturday morning. Thank you so much. We start today with President Trump and senior White House officials doubling down on economic pressures on Iran as they try to find a way to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. And now President Trump is floating a new idea.
And after we finish defeating Iran, which is being very badly defeated. Pretty soon I'll be declaring the Hormuz Strait a territory of the United States.
All right, obviously, President Trump there, whether that's real or just rhetoric remains to be seen. But the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, well, he foreshadowed this.
We are going to apply measures like have never been seen in the history of economic isolation.
Now, the U.S. Treasury Secretary saying that announcement would be made in the coming week. It certainly caught our attention.
Yeah. So watch this space, he said. It's going to be a 1-2 punch of economic strangling of the regime and keeping the strait closed. The question is, how long will this take?
And what else? And what are the specifics here? What more can you do here?
Well, that's true. Having had sanctions in place on Iran for some 47 years, we turn to Nathan Bomey for his take on this, a business reporter at Axios, joining us live this morning on Bloomberg This Week. And Nathan, it's great to see you. What do you expect to hear from the Treasury Secretary this week? We count 2,200 sanctions that have been put on Iran in the last 47 years. What else is there left to do?
Well, so much of the focus right now has been on this blockade that's taken place with the Strait of Hormuz, because, of course, that is the economic engine that drives the Iran economy. And so by cutting off oil supplies and cutting off their ability to ship oil out, that, effectively undermines their revenue engine. So I think the big question is, will these new sanctions be, creative in some way that we haven't seen? And I think the probably most likely avenue, if you're going to be extremely aggressive, would be sanction the friend of the friend, and essentially maybe, someone who does business with Iran who isn't currently affected. Obviously, China, for example, would be the first country that comes to mind doing business with Iran and through energy, for example. Could they hit that? That would, of course, be another escalation in the U.S. trade war with China.
Nathan, it does feel like a he said kind of incident, if you will. I mean, take a look at what Iran is saying. I mean, everyone's kind of waiting to see who blinks first. The Iranian deputy foreign minister saying on X, the Strait of Hormuz has been Iranian, is Iranian, and will remain Iranian. This strait will only be closed and opened under Iran's command. Iran has a lot of leverage here. So, I mean, you do think about it. They learned, right? The Strait of Hormuz gives them an incredible weapon against the United States, against the world. So what's their next move?
Well, I think we're perilously close to a stalemate here. I mean, obviously in chess, where nobody has much of a next move, I think that's a bit of a possibility, because I don't think Iran has a lot of options necessarily, but it's not like they're stuck either, in the sense that they, if they can maintain their economy sort of in this sort of somewhat fragile state without having the Strait of Hormuz, that's obviously not ideal for them, but it's a lot better than in any sort of total collapse, which at this point doesn't seem inevitable. So I think what the Trump administration is under pressure to do is to do something about $4 a gallon gas prices. I mean, that's really what this is all about for the Trump administration in a lot of ways, because we're looking at 3 months from now, the midterms, and we know that gas prices are the number one thing that affects people's perception of the economy. And so that's bearing down.
You said one word that seems most important right now, Nathan, and that's China. If we really want to get serious about this and do something different than we have since 1979, it would, in fact, be an attempt to squash oil shipments from Iran to China, either through sanctions or tariffs. Is the president actually going to go there before he meets with President Xi in September?
Well, you have to wonder if he wants that stick when he goes for that meeting. And so maybe there'll be some sort of threat or some sort of suggestion that they could go that far. I think in negotiations, it's always better to sort of have the threat still available than to have already exhausted all your options. If the Chinese can figure out a way around those sorts of sanctions, then what options do you have? So I think the threat of some sort of crackdown could be actually in some ways more influential and powerful than actually doing it right away and then seeing what happens.
Hey, Nathan, before we wrap up here, something we were watching in the market yesterday, I actually was reporting on it too, about drone stocks. We definitely saw some movement here, including one that is owned by or, involvement of one of the president's sons. Jr. Exactly. I mean, this stock was on a move, soaring. You've got a new piece out looking at Trump's announcement, the president's announcement that he would impose tariffs on imported drones. What is this about? What's his aim here? I've got to say that China's got to be watching as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, speaking of China, certainly that is the big elephant in the room here, because trying to put tariffs on foreign imports of drones is really about this China war, trade war that's going on, because ultimately Washington just does not trust technology that's coming out of China. And certainly as we see the escalation of drone warfare in Russia, Ukraine, I think that has taught a lot of people that any sort of future conflict that the United States might be involved in is probably going to be heavily drone based. And the problem is we don't make that many drones in the United States. And so these tariffs are aimed at sort of bringing manufacturing of drones back here. Not a lot of it happening right now. And so I think, that's the effort here. But whether or not that's actually going to happen, we don't know. I mean, the tariff strategy for the Trump administration has really been, a fairly scatterplot. So it's hard to say whether this is going to actually, get some activity, but we did see the market react positively, which suggests investors do believe that there could be some action there.
Yeah, Unusual Machines, AeroVironment, Kratos, they all took off on this.
Well, and I don't know if you guys saw also this morning, the UK Ministry of Defense stepping up scrutiny of its supply chain after discovering some naval drones transmitted signals to China. So it's a U.S. issue, Nathan, as we know, but I feel like, Joe, the world is looking at this when it comes to China.
Watch out for the drones overhead. Nathan, you're great. Thanks for helping us with your reporting. Overnight, India's prime minister addressing crowds for his country's 80th Independence Day spoke for over an hour. Leader of the world's most populous country, speaking about the recent youth protests there, as well as his goals for India's economic and cultural future.
I want to shake up the country a bit. I also want to shake up the strength of the nation. The country does not mean just the government. The country means every citizen who is connected to it. Can we not imagine? We often hear about the Fortune 500. Why shouldn't 50 of those companies be from India in the coming decade?
All right, joining us right now from New Delhi, Bloomberg News senior reporter Dan Strump. Dan, good to have you here with Joe and me and Lisa this morning. We got to talk about this. So go back to 1947. That's when India became independent after, 200 years of rule by Britain. Country is increasingly a force to reckon with. What stood out in this speech from Modi that will get them there?
Yeah, so this was very much a forward-looking speech, a speech about India's economy, a speech about India's development. As you said, the sort of top-line takeaway was a sort of reiteration of this long-standing goal that this government has, which is to sort of make India a developed country by 2047. And that is the 100-year centenary anniversary of India's independence. Being a developed country, it's a bit of a term of art, right? But it really means, raising up the economy, making sure that the country is technologically competitive, that its companies and businesses and financial institutions are competitive, that its people are educated at a high level. And so that was really the big takeaway from the speech, and some really, really high level ambitions set out to sort of get there.
High level indeed, Dan. The country will have up to 8 more chip plants, he said, in the next 7 to 8 years. That alone is something the United States can't even seem to do. Can they pull it off in India?
Well, it is very ambitious, right? And India is already well on its way, actually, in when it comes to the chip industry. I mean, it's primarily a force right now in chip assembly, which is on the lower end of the sort of value chain when it comes to chips. But getting there is a big priority, and it really speaks to this high-level ambition that India has to be a technological force to be reckoned with. So, I mean, it's not just chips, but it's AI, it's
5 nuclear
high-tech
reactors?
assembly. That's right. Nuclear power was a big highlight of this speech.
Are they as
well.
power hungry as we are because of AI development?
Oh, I mean, totally. I mean, this is also a big priority for India, is to become a big data center hub. And as we all know, I mean, these data centers are enormous hogs of power. And so, building more nuclear capacity is a huge sort of, plank in this pillar to kind of get there and be a player in AI. And so that goal for nuclear power is actually it's 100 gigawatts, which is 11 times the current capacity in India. But this is the goal, and that's where they want to get to.
Hey, I do think about, though, the youth problems that we see around the world. We certainly see it here in the United States. Folks that can't find jobs come out of with a college education, even those that do not. India has seen also its share of issues. How is it dealing with that? How does it create some programs and policies that actually address that significantly? They've been dealing with some protests recently, not necessarily directly related, but this is certainly an issue for them.
Well, no, I mean, it really is quite related, and it tied into some of the high points of today's speech. You're right. I mean, India is just coming off this weeks-long protest movement. I mean, you can see that you've got some of that footage right there. A lot of these protests got very heated, very violent. It was led by this youth, this sort of student-led movement called the Cockroach Janta Party, which was kind of what began as a kind of a satire, but turned into a really powerful student-led movement protesting sort of shortcomings in the country's education system, feelings of frustration that young people are not getting a payoff in terms of employment, in terms of opportunities from the education that they're getting, and a sense in India that young people are feeling a bit left out and let down. And you do have a real unemployment crisis in India generally, but it's particularly acute among young people. Something like 40% of young graduates in India with a college degree can't find work. And so, that's a real problem, of course, for people's livelihoods, but it's a big political problem for this country as well, because, I mean, we all know that, young people out of work without much to do, this can be a problem for any government. And so this was part of the speech. I mean, Modi does want to address this problem. He has been taking steps to show that he's listening to these young people. There was a major announcement. Maybe the biggest announcement from today's speech was this announcement to introduce free coaching for young people who are taking competitive exams. And so that's kind of one way that the government is trying to sort of listen to the young people and show that it is kind of hearing them and attentive to this jobs crisis.
We just got 30 seconds left, Dan. Self-reliance came up repeatedly in this address. Who does India not want to be reliant upon?
It's a great question, and it's a huge highlight for the government these days. India is a major importer of lots of important goods. It's a huge oil importer. Yep. It's a huge importer of weapons, of defense. It's the world's second largest importer of weapons, in fact. And so it's a big priority for this government to be more self-reliant in these areas, to be more self-reliant in manufacturing, and to overall be a stronger, more self-reliant economy.
Right, Dan. With us live from New Delhi. Thank you so much, Dan. Coming up, sailors reporting dire conditions aboard the USS Lincoln. This is a really tough one, Carol. We're going to have much more on this straight ahead on Bloomberg this weekend.
Thank you for joining us live on Bloomberg This Week. And I'm Lisa Mateo. Let's update you on today's top stories. An Israeli airstrike on southern Lebanon has killed 7 people. State-run national news agency said the attack targeted a home on the edge of a village in Ansar. It's one of the deadliest strikes since a truce between Israel and Hezbollah went into effect in June. Well, fire lit up the night sky near a port in western Yemen after an alleged Houthi strike. Yemen's international recognized government, army media, it said that 6 ballistic missiles were fired Friday, killing 1 person and wounding 8 others. Hawaii's Big Island bracing for a direct hit from tropical storm Lala. Forecasters say it will bring heavy rain that can cause destructive flooding and strong winds that can fuel wildfires. If Lala makes landfall as a hurricane, it would be the first to do so since 1871. Well, a powerful magnitude 7.7 earthquake has struck off the coast of Indonesia, killing at least 38 people. The quake, it collapsed buildings and homes and also triggered a landslide. The tsunami warning was initially issued, but it has later been lifted. And concerned residents in Bogota, Colombia, they have been bringing supplies to collection centers following the 7.4 magnitude earthquake that hit the western part of the country earlier this week. Volunteers, they sorted food and medicine and other essential items into packages to be delivered to the survivors. The earthquake has killed more than 280 people, left hundreds more missing. Joe and Carol, people pitching in to kind of help out there.
Yeah, a lot of tough stories around the world right now. And that includes this next one. So let's get to it. The USS Abraham Lincoln pulled out of its naval base in San Diego 1 week before Thanksgiving. And the 5,000 sailors on board have been at sea ever since. That's more than 260 consecutive days. No port calls, no supporting, or they are, of course, now supporting the mission in the Middle East. And that's what they've been there for a long time.
It's incredible now. Family members say their sailors are suffering.
Yeah.
Several have reportedly tried to go overboard. Here's what the commander-in-chief said about it yesterday when he was asked.
That ship is moving right now, or very shortly, and it's being replaced with another very similar ship.
Has the deployment's gone on too long?
No. Not nearly long enough. Thank you, everybody.
Not nearly long enough. A statement that has resonated since he said this yesterday. Navy veteran Natalie Oliverio is covering the story for the Military Times. We've been referring to her work throughout the week, and I'm glad to say that she joins us now live. Natalie, it's great to see you. What do the president's words there mean for families of sailors on the Lincoln?
Thanks for having me this morning. The president's words maybe came out a little bit rough. I think also the families and those concerned are not really focused on how long the ship has been out on deployment. It's the conditions to which the ship has been living through, working through.
Well, let's talk about that. We've saw food shortages, not able to wash laundry, not able to communicate with your family. You are a Navy veteran. This isn't normal. This isn't how it's supposed to be. This isn't how we're supposed to treat our military, is it?
No, and I think that another thing that's being conflated is that our military is complaining, we're making them into victims, and that could not be further from the truth. No one in the world can adapt and overcome like a U.S. Navy sailor. I can tell you that firsthand. And it is the most incredible example of making something out of nothing. So when you're literally left with nothing and you have the skill of creating something from that, and even then you can't come up with it, we are not delivering for our military. There is a basic need that is not being met.
I just have to say, my brother served on the USS Abraham Lincoln. He was in the Navy for about 6 years. He was in the Middle East, and he just cannot believe what he's been hearing about the conditions there, that this is not normal.
Remembering that Jerry Ford actually had some massive issues with facilities aboard when it was cycled out of the region. When it came to the laundry facilities, the bathrooms, remember, toilets were not flushing. We're hearing some stories like that on the Lincoln. People should understand, though, that an aircraft carrier is a floating city. As we already mentioned, there are 5,000 people living aboard. Natalie, I had the honor of doing an embark on the USS Eisenhower once while in deployment, and it is an absolutely overwhelming thing to witness these 5,000 people working in concert to keep this ship and the carrier strike group afloat. The president said that it is not accurate that the sailors are all in dire straits right now. Can you give us a sense of how many of that city of 5,000 are experiencing these conditions?
I would not say that our sailors are in dire straits. I don't think that that's accurate at all. I think our sailors are incredible, and they're doing an incredible job doing everything they can to stay mission ready. Mission ready requires proper nutrition, proper sleeping conditions, proper hygiene, the pieces of your puzzle that get you ready for your day to do your job to the best of your ability. That's what we're talking about. We cannot send our servicemen and women into any operation without every single thing they need to complete that puzzle for themselves.
And speaking of what they need, communication back home is so crucial for these individuals. You spoke to the wife of one of those sailors who tried to go overboard. She told you he's scared. He thinks he'll get a dishonorable discharge. And just because he was burnt out, his 13-year career is ruined just like that. That's not fair. That's not right. That's not what he should be worrying about right now. Has she heard from him lately? Has any of this in terms of the communication changed?
Not currently. And that's really the worst part, is not having any control over the kind of communication, the level of communication, especially when someone you love is struggling. That's really difficult.
We had a conversation with the ranking member on the Armed Services Committee in the Senate, Senator Jack Reed, who, of course, is a veteran himself, having served the 82nd Airborne in the U.S. Army. Natalie, he was really upset about this when we spoke and suggested that the chairman, of course, a Republican, shared his sentiment on this. They want an investigation. Listen to what he said.
This is not something that's just isolated to Abraham Lincoln. We're getting complaints from families in Rhode Island about the conditions on other vessels. Yeah. And if you ask Army personnel that are stationed in the area, Marines, etc., I'm sure there's some difficulties there also. And the other thing that's so critical, and it tracks a bit with the depletion of our weapons, is this is hurting our readiness all through the world.
It comes down, again, Natalie, as you said, to readiness. But the senator is projecting a much wider issue throughout our military. Do you share those concerns?
I do. And what he's describing are the smaller ships that comprise the battle group that support the USS Abraham Lincoln. They're guided missile destroyers and various other types of ships that are sailing with them who have been out just as long. There may not be one-to-one comparisons as far as port calls, but they have not had an easy road whatsoever. They are in a very similar condition, maybe not with the ship's functions because the size and the scale are just not at the same level, but it's not been smooth sailing. And the thing I think everyone needs to remember is that it is our administration's job, our leaders' job to make sure that our sailors and our service members have absolutely everything they need to the best of our ability. There are incredibly unique situations where that will not happen, and everyone knows that. But letting it go for this long, to go this depleted, to be run this down, and I'll tell you, the number one most important piece of readiness is courage. And the biggest amount of courage anyone could ever show is asking for help.
Well, you also mentioned leadership and leaders. Do you, as someone who is a veteran, who understands military, how it works, command and ranks and respecting your commanders is certainly key to having a functioning military. But do you feel that commanders have actually spoken out and stood up for their rank and file? Do you think that they have done enough?
I think that they most likely have done everything they can with what they have to work with. I know that the commanders that I was fortunate enough to serve under, I would trust them with my life, and I did. And the leadership that I personally experienced is incredibly strong. These service members are cared for. They are respected. They are a part of the most important military in the world. So I'm not sure what the problem is in supporting them on every level.
So understanding this, what went wrong? Did we underestimate how long this war would go on and how long we need our military in the Middle East? Is it a case that we weren't really prepared in the United States? What went wrong here, in your view?
In my view, I don't know that it's a preparation thing. I think that no one really knew how long this was going to go on. I think most people thought it would be short-lived or hoped it would be short-lived. Extensions are not uncommon, but they're not planned. Most deployments on a ship, you have a departure date and a return date. And yeah, that can fluctuate. But your port calls, they're everything. You look forward to those port calls. Maybe there's a couple weeks in between, and that's fine. That's normal. Life underway is busy. Time flies. The people working on that ship have so many collateral responsibilities and ancillary duties just to keep the ship running and operational. And most people cannot grasp the concept of that lift.
Natalie, Carol referred to Annabelle Loma from San Diego, whose husband attempted to go overboard. You write that she initially received a call from the ship's ombudsman after her husband only a few times had spoken with her about this. Can you just bring that home for us? I didn't know that a ship had an ombudsman. What is that phone call like?
Ombudsmen are amazing human beings that really are the bridge between families and the ship. It is extremely difficult to get a hold of a ship underway. So the ombudsman is that touch point. we have heard and seen on movies and news about people getting the knock at the door. Okay.
Yes.
We understand. We can understand what that must be like. But when you get it out of the blue, taking care of 3 kids, and it comes as a phone call with not a lot of answers, I think any human being could empathize with her. And I think that our military families are incredible. They tolerate and survive through unimaginable things that most people will never have to. So to be in the face of combat on the home front, it is unnerving, unraveling, and God forbid your service member go through an issue. A sailor wanting to jump overboard, it doesn't mean that they want to end their life. It means that they're at a place where they need help. They're asking for help. They feel no escape. I can't imagine what they're feeling. But anybody who's struggling at one day, it doesn't mean you're going to struggle forever. You're not damaged for life. Worrying about your career is something that service members do, because everything you do is about your career, and everything is really riding on your delivery and your performance as a service member. So everyone's afraid of that being taken away. And then your status as a veteran, your benefits, those all go away too. So the fear and the scarcity around asking for help and the consequences that could come are enough to silence people. And that is not okay.
Natalie, thank you so much. We really appreciate your reporting, your insight, and finding some time for us this morning. Natalie Oliverio, she is, of course, a military journalist, a Navy veteran. I have to say, my dad, his brothers were in World War II. Yeah. I've got lots of family members. Absolutely. And it just goes to, respect for our military who are out there defending so much.
And thanks to Natalie for her service.
Yeah. In our next hour, we're going to talk with Bloomberg Economics' Becca Wasser. Is this a forever war? We're going to ask her.
Thank you for joining us live on Bloomberg This Week, and I'm Lisa Mateo. Let's update you on today's top stories. Alibaba now has the world's #1 artificial intelligence model. Its open weight models have accumulated more than 3 billion global downloads in the past 6 months, surpassing Meta, Google, and its domestic peers in China. Anthropic telling prospective investors its second quarter revenue jumped at least 14-fold versus the same period a year ago. According to documents seen by Bloomberg, the company reported a preliminary revenue figure of more than $11.5 billion in its latest completed quarter. It comes as Anthropic and meets with investors ahead of its potential mega IPO. And sources tell Bloomberg Jane Street posted roughly $15 billion of losses in July, its first monthly slump in about a decade. It comes as AI-focused hedge funds, situational awareness dragged down asset prices across equity markets. Jane Street invested in situational awareness and has made wrong-way bets in Asian equity markets. Big story there, Joe and Karen.
Yeah, bit of a surprise there.
Yes. Lisa, thank you. With just 80 days until the midterm elections, that's impossible. Candidates across the political spectrum are looking for a way to harness their popularity or presence to gain a place of leadership.
I bet they are. David and Christina spoke to activist Rashad Robinson about his new book, From Presence to Power.
Great to see you. And I want to start with what's a crucial distinction in this book. So there's presence and power. And you write, when we confuse presence and power and focus on achieving the wrong one, we lose. Help us understand, sort of in terms of activism, in terms of doing work, what the difference is between those two things.
Well, we live in this age of likes, shares, followers. And so the kind of changing a headline, getting mistaken for actually changing a set of rules. That's the difference between presence and power. And I think sometimes we can get really excited by the awareness that people sort of know about the issue. They may care. We may even see polling numbers that say, the majority of Americans want sensible gun reform. But the power to actually get there is not about the polling or the awareness or the headlines. It is about sort of all the ways in which you build leverage, all the ways in which you change incentive structures, all the ways in which you build enough energy so that you can force something to happen that wouldn't otherwise happen.
I felt this point so deeply, and I think it's such a good point because as someone who's covered so many protests, the thing I always say is, okay, but how are you going to do that? What are your actions? Like standing out, yelling, changing your Instagram to a color is not going to do it. But I'm wondering if it can almost even have the opposite effect, because people who may disagree with you or people who may agree with you feel like you're overrepresented and maybe it's solved. Look, I see it everywhere, and then they don't take the action they need to.
100%. You know, when we stake presence for power, you could think something has happened that hasn't actually happened. Black president, meaning that you're post-racial, right? And so folks think, oh, the work is over. You know, the thing about protest as well is that some of them have just become choreography. Folks show up to a certain place at a certain time. By the end of the day, everything's cleaned up. The media cycle goes on, and no one is nervous about disappointing the communities that showed up. And so we do have to think differently, because the strategies that sort of got us into this mess, the sort of ways in which we are facing so many challenges, they're not going to be the same challenges that get us out. And I think for those that have been showing up in this moment, protesting, raising their voices in different ways, they're asking a lot of times of like, why are we losing? Why haven't we won more things?
Is the answer accountability?
Well, the answer is that we've just been using the wrong strategies. The answer is that we haven't had a clear analysis around where we take the fights to. And I think that losing and recognizing that you're losing is like the first step on the way to winning. Because I think one thing that the right wing has done really effective is they've changed politics. They've made it so that everyone has a role. So people wear their red caps out in the world. If you go into
a tangible identity.
Yeah, they go into a gym. They're changing the channel to conservative media. They're doing all sorts of things to shape the environment that they live in. And a lot of times for folks who believe in social change and progress are almost whispering their beliefs, or maybe just showing up to a protest in the like most comfortable part of town, you know, on the designated day where it gets wrapped up after 3 hours and everyone goes home, but then the rest of their time they're not wearing their energy out in the world. And so as a result, we can sometimes look like we're almost embarrassed by what we believe. We're not moving people along. And so while our opponents have been going to school board meetings and shaping the way that libraries buy books and all of these things, we have to shift that.
I want to talk to you about the asymmetry of power. So I think of how we've interacted over the years. Often you would be called to big meetings. You go to Silicon Valley and talk to big tech executives. You go to Hollywood, talk to big media and entertainment executives. You'd be in Washington during moments of protest or national difficulty. What did you learn from those interactions about the way in which those folks in power attained it and maintained it? How did you think about the dynamic that you had representing people who had real grievances and wanted real change with folks who'd really reached this echelon where they hadn't been thinking about that very much?
So I tell a lot of stories in the book about this because I think it's really important to unlock for folks what happens behind the scenes, because some of these lessons of going in and trying to push Mark Zuckerberg and Sheryl Sandberg at Facebook to do something different,
which you were doing,
is and getting change is actually similar to like going into your school board meeting or going into your local library board or whatever. And you know, one of the things I learned in those back and forth. Well, first of all, my first meeting where we finally built up enough leverage to go and meet with Mark and Sheryl, after there was a lot of back and forth in the media and they had hired a PR firm to attack me in the organization, I get to Menlo Park and they want me to sign an NDA. And I was like, I'm not signing an NDA. So they give me a big badge that says NDA on it that I have to wear around the campus. But because I didn't sign that NDA, I'm actually tell real stories about what happened. And one of the things I learned was the difference between being in a dialogue and a negotiation. Your opponents want to keep you in a dialogue. They want to say, we're talking to that group. We've heard those climate activists.
We've heard your concerns. That's a phrase we heard a lot.
We've heard the women that are upset about this, and we're listening to them, and we're really concerned. When you're in a negotiation, you have leverage. You have the ability to actually move something, but knowing the difference between whether you're just in a conversation that feels good and whether or not you have the ability to actually make meaningful change is the difference between presence and power. And far too often we can be incentivized to want to be in the room. We want to be incentivized to sort of feel like we've been shouted out or our concerns have been amplified. But those are not the same as actually moving things along.
But I wonder, in what you were just talking about, if there needs to be an important distinction. It seems like you address this between forcing visibility and forcing understanding, because I think about the gay marriage debate and how it moved the country over a relatively short period of time. It did it not by shouting, it did it by human stories, by trying to talk to people, you know, about the soul of these couples and lives. And Do you think people have gotten too far away from that? I hear a lot, it's not on me to educate you, and that's completely fair, but it also might be counterproductive?
Yeah, I write a lot about this because between 2005 and 2011, I was the head of programs at GLAAD and did a lot of work in Hollywood and in local communities. And I tell a story centered on the culture of belief. Back 2006, I remember going to places like Alabama and, deep red parts of Texas and training couples to both tell their stories, but also start putting their wedding announcements in the newspaper long before marriage equality was a thing, and advocating to have newspapers accept those same-sex wedding announcements, right? Because what we knew from the research at the time is that more people, once they knew gay and lesbian couples, once where they were around them,
they're not another anymore.
Yes, but we also saw that people weren't talking about their lives. They may come out, and then after that, they weren't having conversations with the straight people in their lives, so people weren't being invested. And so understanding from a strategic lens is the thing that's actually going to change people's hearts and minds is folks talking about it and engage, but people are not talking about it and engage, and now from a strategic lens, you have to shift sort of how people are showing up. And so I do think the culture of belief, of people being willing to stand up and take risks, even when they don't know what's on the other side. Because the people who were putting their same-sex wedding announcements in the newspaper in 2006 could have had their announcement in the paper on a Sunday and then show up on a Monday and be legally fired from their job for it. And so that is a risk. They could be legally ostracized. And so every social movement has been built by people willing to take deep risk. And at the same time, movements have to be thoughtful about where we're directing people's energy, right? It's not enough to just say, show up here or protest here. If you don't have a theory about sort of what are we trying to do, what's our leverage, what's our power.
All right, everybody, Rashad Robinson there. All right, when we come back, I'm looking forward to this. Yeah. I watched it at home. Lisa. BTW.
It's going to be great. We got a good one today. And you can explore live streaming, news, and interviews, all our Bloomberg TV shows, documentaries, reporter analysis, and a lot more, all in one place. Check out Bloomberg.com/videos.
All right, welcome back, everybody, to Bloomberg This Weekend, or BTW. I'm Carol Massar, along with Joe Mathieu. Let's get to
that stands for.
See, I can actually teach you, or we can teach you something. I'm like, wow. All right, let's bring in Lisa Mateo. What do you got for us?
All right, so how far in advance do you guys plan vacations? Are you way in advance? Are you last minute, folks? What do you think?
I'm not way in advance, but I am the type who thinks that planning the trip is actually as fun frequently as taking the trip.
Hey, they've done research on this, that it's important to plan because you get kind of a high planning it, leading up to it,
That's right.
and then going on it. So you have to do that. A little bit of both.
A little bit of both. Okay, so how about this one? This is from the Wall Street Journal, okay? The mystery vacations that give you no idea where you're actually going. People are buying these, okay? This is on Groupon, of course. It is Groupon's mystery deals, okay? Right. So listen to the price of this, though. This is why. Okay, so it covers flights and hotel stays for 2 to 7 nights. Prices range from about $200 to $300 per person for all of that, okay?
Bargain.
It depends on, what airport you leave out of course.
Beaches don't cost a lot.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But it's not, but here's the thing that bothers me. Okay, so once you buy it, you fill out this form, right? And then once you fill out the form, there's no refunds. You still don't know where you're going yet.
Come on.
So just
you
think
find out
about
when you
this.
get there?
So within 72 hours, someone will call you and tell you finally where you're going.
Are they good trips?
Some of them are good. Like some people, so people were complaining like they would get like Orlando. And they're like, oh, I've been to Orlando, like been there, done that. But exotic. You can't back out of it. There's no refunds,
That's my
right?
question. You can't say no, right?
You can't say no.
What if you don't want to go?
I bet there's a Reddit on this.
Like you got to bring
Big time. Absolutely.
It's all over social media. People are posting about all these trips because it's like 3 tiers, like gold, silver, bronze. If you get the gold, hey, you get to go to beach, or maybe you get to go overseas, to like Europe.
I said nudist beach. That's why it's so cheap. I don't know if you missed that. That's why it was inexpensive. I know it's early. I know. My coffee's kicking in.
Wait till 9. You won't believe what you see.
Wait until 9 o'clock. So that's what's going on. But it's through Groupon, so that's their whole thing. Let's move to education, okay? Because the education system, we know has been going through some troubles, right? This is not college, okay? So this is from Bloomberg. It says shuttered colleges. They're selling the only asset they have left. their campuses. Okay, so this was pretty interesting. So you heard of a lot of stories, like about 50 colleges closed or merged since about 2020. So now you have these huge amounts of land, you have these buildings and everything that are going up for sale. So the question is, can they sell it? Do people take a loss? Like, what's going on? Right. And so it's this big fight kind of back and forth about what to do with all this. Sometimes you convert them into housing. Like, what do you do with this? You know,
data centers.
Data centers.
That's what I thought you were going to say.
Well done,
but that was
Joe.
not mentioned in the article. I'm telling you, that's probably going to be another thing.
It's so sad. We've been overbuilt with academia, I feel like, and I think we're going to hear a lot more because they've got to figure out what to do with it, right? Data centers.
It is. Data center, or luxury resorts was another option. So
I'm kind of kidding, though. I mean, these are like really nice plots of land, right?
They are huge plots of land.
Are we building condos? What else can we do?
Yeah, luxury resorts, condos, residential. That's places, medical facilities, maybe hospitals, kind of thing. But yeah, it's what to do with it. Wow. All right, I want to stick with college and go to this one. Okay, this is from Bloomberg. This one, here we go. Outsiders pay $6,500 to learn Southern sorority rush's unwritten rules. You did see, I know, this one caught my eye. Okay, so basically this is the weekend, right? This is the weekend that girls find out if they got the bid for the sorority. They've been there the whole week. They've been doing the interviews, the makeup, you know, the outfits, all that stuff. And they're going to find out. But parents, which I didn't even realize because my daughter's not joining a sorority, her school doesn't have one, that they pay these consultants to teach their daughters how to get into the ones they want because they don't want their daughters to be left out, okay?
Can't you just watch Animal House and show up?
They do their resumes. They go through their social media pages. There's resumes. There's headshots. Joe, this is a huge
harder
thing.
to get into college.
I have to say, I feel like in my era of going to college and I'm a little bit older, like you didn't necessarily do, the sorority thing wasn't so big. It is massive now.
Social media.
Everybody's involved, even if they're not really into it. My daughter did it and I was surprised.
No kidding.
We did not pay thousands of dollars.
Good. I didn't even have a Greek system in my school. I don't know the first thing about it. I'm learning as you're reading here.
It is, but it's huge. And then the dues on top of it, you have to pay too.
Yeah, you do have to pay
like
dues.
$3,000 to $4,000 on top of the housing and tuition.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's a super social thing, but I'm also like, oh my God, stop paying for the kids. Let them figure it out. And if they don't make it, okay, then go
you have to
play
deal
soccer
with
or
rejection. You have to learn how to deal with it.
Not everybody gets a medal.
I know.
Listen to you.
Thank you.
Tough love from Carol Massar pretty early in the morning.
I love big time, but come on.
Yes.
I'm with you 100%.
Accountability, like you got to learn these things.
I'm along the Carol Massar train right now.
Aggie's like sitting at home and she's like, I know this.
But you get the secret handshake and then so someday they'll help you get a job maybe. You follow this network throughout your life, right?
Yes, correct.
Yes. Do you guys like sushi? Are you big sushi fans?
Do we get sushi on this show?
Maybe.
I like a scallion pancake.
Would you like half off sushi? 50% off.
Why is it half off?
You can get it here in New York City.
Immediately
suspect. These are the Japanese markets, so they make a lot of it, but after 8 p.m.
Okay.
So it's been sitting kind of there all day.
Yeah.
After 8 p.m.,
what could possibly
it goes half
go
off.
wrong? Lettuce, anybody?
Sorry.
But too soon.
People are lining up to get this.
Like, to get half off.
I mean, think about it. People line up to get a $20 cupcake.
Yeah.
Like, they're lining up to get a
deal. There's a day-old bagel,
a
though. I feel differently about a day-old piece of sushi, don't you?
What did your daughter tell you?
She swears by the ShopRite sushi. I mean, what have I done wrong as a parent?
Nothing against ShopRite. I'm sure it's fine. I like my sushi made in front of me.
Yeah.
Or my California roll made in front of me.
And maybe
California
not
roll. That's my go-to.
Yeah.
But this is what people are doing. And owners are saying, you know what, they're breaking even because you think about it. How are they making money off of it?
The only thing I would say, there's so much food waste. So if they know it's safe, like I do think this is important because we have people starving and yet we're throwing out so much food.
And that's what they say. They throw out, but now they'll just sell it and people will pack some snacks and drinks in their basket too at the same time.
Just pop a Pepto and enjoy your sushi, right? We're coming up on 8 a.m. already in New York, Carol. The next hour of Bloomberg This Weekend.
Yes, do not go anywhere.
Starts
Joe and I
right
are
now.
coming back. It is Saturday.
Welcome to Bloomberg This Weekend, live from New York with David Gura, Christina Ruffini, and Lisa Mateo. The latest headlines, key analysis, big interviews, and the stories that hit home on your days off.
And a very good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Bloomberg This Weekend. It is 8 a.m. in New York City from Bloomberg's World Headquarters in New York. I'm Carol Massar.
And I'm Joe Mathieu, alongside Carol and Lisa Mateo. David and Christina are off this weekend?
Yeah.
I didn't think they got
David's
days
sending
off,
a very nice message this morning.
Well, yep, he said break a leg. And
Break
I hope
a
that
leg.
David, I hope you have a lovely, and Christina as well.
Just trying not to fall off the chair.
Any excuse to start a day with Carol is good enough for me. And I'm delighted to be up here in New York with not only, as I mentioned, Carol Massar, but Lisa Mateo right now with the headlines.
You got it. And let's get to President Trump. He says the USS Lincoln's record time at sea during Iran operations is, quote, not nearly long enough.
That ship is moving right now, or very shortly, and it's being replaced with another very similar ship. No. Not nearly long enough. Thank you, everybody.
The president was speaking with reporters before flying to New York for an event. American sailors have been aboard the ship for nearly 9 months. Concerns have escalated about the mental health and supply issues aboard the aircraft carrier. According to multiple reports, the Pacific-based aircraft carrier USS George Washington has begun heading toward the Middle East as a replacement. Well, at that event on Long Island that was attended by the president, Trump acknowledged that he's used the U.S. military, quote, a little bit more than I wanted to. He jokingly added that he would soon declare the Strait of Hormuz a territory of the United States. Now, the president's comments, it comes as more ships have come under attack in the Strait. The UK Maritime Trade Operation says it has been notified of a projectile striking the hull of a bulk carrier, and 2 Abu Dhabi national oil vessels were struck while transiting Hormuz on Thursday, and another was hit on Friday evening. That's according to reports from the United Arab Emirates state-run news agency. There were no reports of injuries. Well, in other news, Luigi Mangione admitted he killed United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson in 2024. He also changed his plea to guilty to 2 federal stalking charges. U.S. Attorney Jamie McDonald spoke outside federal court in Manhattan yesterday.
Today, the Southern District of New York, together with our law enforcement partners, writes the final chapter of Mangione's federal prosecution. Now, he stands convicted in federal court and faces life in prison.
Mangione read a statement where he said he planned the shooting after years of severe pain from a broken back and obstacles in dealing with the healthcare system. His lawyers are now looking to dismiss the New York State murder case against him, citing double jeopardy. The Manhattan District Attorney's Office says it has no intention of dropping the state case, with the trial scheduled to start September 8th. Now, the Thompson family, they have released a statement after Mangione's plea change, saying, quote, while nothing will ease the pain of losing him, we are grateful that the federal justice system has held the person responsible for this heinous act accountable. Joe and Carol, send it over to you.
Well, President Trump is waking up about 45 miles west of here in Bedminster this morning, where he is trying to do a couple of things at once. Convince the American people that the Iran war was worth it, and tell them that the golden age he promised is here.
Took a good swing at it last night on Long Island. Here he is last evening.
The golden age of America is upon us. It's the golden age. We've never had anything like it. We will make America powerful again. We've already done that. We will make America wealthy again. We've already done that. We will make America healthy again. We're trying to do that. We will make America strong again. We've done that.
Seizing on the issue of crime fighting. That's why he was surrounded by police and first responders. Catherine Lucy's traveling with the president in New Jersey. I'm glad to say she joins us now live. Catherine, it's great to see you. The president talking about the golden age, which you're seizing on in your great column. With 80 days to the midterms, however, there are great questions about the state of our economy, prices, of course, inflation, the cost of energy with the war in Iran. And a lot of Republicans who are running for election right now, not named Donald Trump, are pretty worried about the narrative coming out of the White House. What's the administration think?
I mean, that's right. The president, as we saw last night, talking about a golden age, saying he doesn't regret anything with the Iran war. He talked on his way there about how great the economy was doing from the perspective of Wall Street. But what we're seeing is his narrative and his messaging really bump up against the concerns of a lot of Americans. And we see this in polling, we see this in our reporting, that Americans remain deeply concerned about the economy, They are concerned about Trump's handling of the economy. People are frustrated about prices. And those concerns continue to mount. People are frustrated about gas prices and the Iran war and the impact that's had on oil. And so you have this situation where the president is pitching, one narrative about the economy, and there is some data to back it up, but voters' lived experience is very, very different. And this puts Republicans running in those midterm races in a tough position. They're trying to address cost of living concerns. They don't want to criticize the president. And they're running against Democrats who have really seized against affordability as their leading midterm message and are hammering them on it. And the White House says the president has a positive story to tell. He wants to talk about the tax bill from last year. He wants to talk about the wins that he's had. But there are certainly some Republicans who say he also needs to acknowledge how voters are feeling and would like to see more on that front.
Catherine, you mentioned gas prices. The president did talk about that last night. Let's listen to what he had to say.
For you to pay a tiny little bit more for your gasoline, just remember you're doing it so that a very evil country cannot have a country. Really, it's the number one state sponsor of terror in the world. We don't want to have them have a nuclear weapon. So remember that when you have to pay a little bit more, you're at $4. It's okay. I mean, it's I'll never apologize. I did the right thing.
That, of course, was President Trump last night. I mean, gas prices, this is about something, you feel it in your pocketbook or your wallet. How does this resonate with voters? Does this make an impact to have the president say something like this, Catherine? Do voters react negatively to it? Because polls certainly show this is not a popular president right now.
Polls show this is not a popular president, and gas prices are not popular. And this was a thing that was a problem as well for President Joe Biden. One of the things with gas and groceries are a thing that people are paying for every week, every couple of days. So that number really hits them. They see it constantly. And so it really weighs on people. I was out earlier this year, a couple months ago, in Iowa, a state that's looking like it'll be a battleground state this year. And there were a lot of voters who said, I understand what President Trump's trying to do in Iran, but I'm worried about how long this is going to go. And I think that's part of the problem, even for some of his supporters, is just how long is this going to take? And certainly that clip, I mean, if you're running against a Republican, I could see Democrats, trying to use that to suggest that the president is not in touch with how voters are feeling.
We played that clip of the president last evening to Congresswoman Gwen Moore, a Democrat from Wisconsin, whose eyes popped when she heard him say a teeny little bit more. It's $4.07 nationally today, Catherine. In New York, where the president was speaking, $4.13. What are you hearing?
About $4. That's hard for people.
Absolutely. Yeah. So what are you hearing off the record, off the air from the administration, knowing that these prices might still be right where they are now in November?
It's a mix, honestly, guys. I think, they do really feel like there are positive things they have done. You saw the president talk about some of those things last night.
Yeah.
They want to talk about no tax on tips, some of the other efforts they've made, some of the other things that they think are an argument about prices. But, there is an acknowledgement that they're not sure how or when the conflict in Iran is going to end, or, when this is going to come down. They do keep arguing that they believe, and you've heard the president say this publicly, that when this conflict ends, those prices will come down. We will see if that happens. But this is it's a tough situation for those Republicans running in tight races because it's not really clear what that timeline is going to be.
Catherine, a favorite scapegoat of President Trump is President Biden. He's a fan of saying he inherited a historically bad economy. I recall coming off the Biden administration, we talked about American exceptionalism and that the United States was the envy of the world. It feels very different. We talk a lot about a K-shaped economy. Yes, the market maybe be hitting records at certain points or recent points, but there are a lot of Americans that certainly don't feel that or benefit from it. What do the statistics say? Bloomberg, we love data. Is it a good economy that President Trump is overseeing right now?
I don't even know if that's in my pay grade to say if it's a good or bad economy. I think from where I sit, though, for people's lived experience, many Americans do not feel like this is a good economy. They feel like prices keep rising. They feel like they can't get ahead. People are struggling with the cost of gas, with the cost of food, with the cost of housing. And so people don't feel like, and I think that's, and that's a thing that we have, that's been growing, and that's a feeling that's been growing for some time. But certainly President Trump has been president for well over a year now. It is his economy. He is responsible for it. And people are really frustrated.
President said last evening, you remember the whole don't take him literally, take him seriously line in the, sometimes you don't know which one to choose here. He told that crowd last evening, and it did sound like he was kind of joking, but maybe not, that when this is all said and done in the war with Iran, that we would make the Strait of Hormuz U.S. territory. Should we take that seriously, literally, or neither?
He was laughing a little bit as he said it. I think the White House, later tried to clarify that wasn't a serious proposal. I think what he is trying to do is project strength.
Yep.
He is trying to make clear that he thinks he still has cards to play. You obviously the White House and the administration is talking about more economic moves, and so the president is looking for paths forward and ultimately an off ramp here. They have been struggling to do that, and that we know that privately this situation has been a great frustration for him, and that he is frustrated they have not been able to figure a way forward.
What's interesting too, Catherine, and Joe, I'm sure you guys talk about this. We've been fooled by polls before. And so I understand that there's been a lot of polls showing that the president's favorable ratings are down a lot on a lot of different issues. And yet, like I said, we've been fooled by them before. Does the president watch these polls? Should we be thinking about them as the midterms get closer and closer? Could a lot change in terms of these polls and his ratings ahead of them? And does it really matter? Because this is a president that seems to defy all odds.
Certainly, President Trump has defied sort of political gravity lots of times. He's not running in these midterms, so that does make a difference. His party does best when he is running. This is a tough moment for polling. Polling is challenging. We've seen a number of polls in the recent primary races in Michigan and Wisconsin that were not reflective of the final results. I do think these broader polls about Americans' moods on the economy and the president are a different type of polling. I'm not a pollster, so I don't want to get too into it, but I do think there's you can make the argument that it's a little easier to try and grasp national mood.
Yeah.
That said, how the mood translates into the votes in the midterms, we have to see. Typically, when folks are this frustrated, it does tend to lead to wanting changes. And I think broadly the thing to think about, and the thing that I've been thinking about beyond just polling, but what we hear from people, what we are seeing so far in the primary results and the elections we've seen so far this year and since the president has taken office, there is a clear frustration. There is a frustration with the handling of the economy and the management of this country right now. And there is also a lot of interest in sort of an insider versus outsider dynamic. So I think there is a lot of interest in candidates who are not part of the political establishment, looking for something new, looking for people who will shake it up. And that says to me that people are really hungry for change. And that speaks, I think, broadly to the mood.
Catherine, we want to ask you about something that hits close to home for you and the entire Bloomberg team that works out of the West Wing every day. And that's the departure of Caroline Leavitt, the press secretary. Typically, the press secretary leaving the White House would be a pretty big story, but this is different. This is special. One of his most loyal and most important advisors leaving the bubble just before the midterms. What's this going to mean for the president? And what will the next season of The Apprentice mean for replacing her?
Certainly in Trump's first term, we saw so many people take that podium. So we'll have to see, what happens there. But yes, Caroline was a very a trusted advisor, very loyal to the president, had a high profile, and got a lot of attention, during her time as press secretary. Yep. Certainly she says there's family reasons why she wants to take on a different role. I do think she may still remain close to the president and in his orbit. Yeah. He does trust her. We've seen that often people who, leave the White House roles remain someone who are high on his call list, someone he talks to. She's going to continue working, I think, in his orbit in other ways. I would not be surprised if we see her out there, on TV advocating for him a lot between now and the midterms. So I think she will continue to play a key private role. But yes, there is a question now of what will, and before you ask, I don't have any great insight on the parlor game as to who could be next. Will Trump just take the podium himself?
I'm not getting off that easy.
I am looking at Polymarket. Margot Martin has 51%.
Yeah.
Kush Desai has 44%.
Really?
Liz
Where's Scott
Huston,
Jennings on this
29%.
thing?
Anna Kelly, 26%.
Okay. Wait, Scott Jennings?
I'm just saying.
I think, Caroline, what happens when he names Bill Pulte as press secretary? What are you guys going to do in the briefing room?
We'll see. It also depends how much these people brief. As you recall, some of them show up a lot, some of them don't. They all do it differently. I mean, I think that Bloomberg will continue to show up and ask serious and tough economic-focused questions.
Hey, one thing I do wonder, Catherine, and to see the president certainly out there in Long Island, how much is he going to be out there on the campaign trail as we get closer to the midterms? I mean, to be fair, he's older. He's got a lot on his plate.
And they said they were going to be out every week.
Yeah.
It hasn't been happening.
Yeah, it hasn't. So I just wonder, what are you guys expecting?
They've been hyping a heavy midterms focused schedule for a long time. That hasn't fully actually happened. He was out in Michigan recently. Yeah, he was on Long Island yesterday. He is older. He doesn't really like to do overnights if he doesn't have to. And he is doing smaller scale events than he was in 18. I think we'll have to see. I think they will have him out, but I don't know if we're going to see the same level of campaigning that we did during the midterm cycle.
One thing we will see this time that we have never before is a midterm convention. As you know, Catherine, you're probably going to be there. Bloomberg is mobilizing in Dallas.
As will you, I'm sure.
Impact? Yeah, what kind of an impact do we think that could make, knowing that President Trump is not on the ballot?
It's a really interesting question. We don't normally see these. And the utility of an event like that with a president who is not terribly popular, I'm curious to see what it does. Does it boost some candidates to go to Texas and do these events with him? Are there others who might be reluctant? I wonder about that. If you're running in one of these sort of 50-50, House districts, if that's a helpful event for you, I think is kind of an open question.
It's going to feel like 100 degrees in Dallas first week of September. Right?
Good for you. Got some short sleeves and some
Kaylee
linen.
Lines is going. I'm going to watch it with the rest of you. Coming up, hey, Catherine, Lucy, thank you. Is the conflict in Iran the United States' new forever war? Bloomberg Economics' Becca Wasser tackles this. I'll tell you what, Carol. Fascinating analysis that might not be encouraging for our audience this morning, but something we need to hear.
Yep.
Bloomberg Weekend continues straight ahead. Bloomberg TV and radio.
Thank you for joining us live on Bloomberg This Week, and I'm Lisa Mateo. Let's update you on today's top stories. Ukraine said it has attacked a Russian space facility in Samara. In a post on social media, Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky said Flamingo missiles hit the Progress rocket and space center, which is involved, among other things, in electronics production. Zelensky also claimed a strike on an airbase just east of Moscow. The facility is a base for various Russian fighter jets and has been struck by Ukrainian drones over the past 2 years. Hawaii's Big Island bracing for a direct hit from tropical storm Lala. Forecasters say it'll bring heavy rains that can cause destructive flooding and strong winds that can fuel wildfires. Now, if Lala makes landfall as a hurricane, it could be the first to do so since 1871. A powerful magnitude 7.7 earthquake has struck off the coast of Indonesia, killing at least 38 people. And the quake collapsed buildings and homes. It triggered a landslide as well. A tsunami warning. It was initially issued, but later lifted. And India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi has renewed his pledge to make the country a developed nation within 2 decades. And he promised to reach out to younger citizens after widespread student protests.
We have decided to introduce different types of online coaching for the youth. We have the digital public infrastructure, excellent teachers, and talent. By combining these, we have decided to provide a comprehensive network of free coaching for the nation's youth.
Modi's comments came during a speech to mark the anniversary of India's independence from British rule in 1947. Joe and Carol, over to you.
All right, Lisa, thank you so much. Well, it has been nearly 6 months since the war in Iran began. Oil and gas prices are up. Traffic through the Strait of Hormuz still threatened. And there is no clear path to end the back and forth and fighting. There's still so much to be resolved.
Well, that's for sure. To that point, in the Bloomberg Weekend essay, Carol, Bloomberg Economics' Becca Wasser, who we talk to all the time here, examining past conflicts and how the U.S. and Iran have found themselves in a new forever war that neither knows how to win, as we read from the essay. Becca joins us now live from Washington. She's our defense analyst at Bloomberg Economics, and it's great to see you, Becca. As you write, after months spent striking each other with bombs and missiles and arm wrestling over ceasefire terms, it is clear neither side can produce a decisive victory. So dare we use the term forever war?
I think we might. And I think part of what we have seen is that this isn't just a single conflict. This is actually part of a broader conflict, a broader cycle of rivalry and enmity that, frankly, we saw the start of this conflict back when Israel and the US bombed Iranian nuclear sites in 2025. And so we're seeing this continuation of a conflict that cannot be won militarily. There's no way to actually have a strategy that ends this. And even things that might look like an end are really just opportunities to sit back, rebuild, reload, and get ready for the next round. That's what we've seen already. And unfortunately, that's what we're likely to continue to see if history is any bellwether.
Becca, how much of it is not understanding the mission, or maybe the United States? I thought this was about denuclearization of Iran. We've gotten very far away from that. So is that part of the problem? What's the goal? What's the end game?
That's a great question. And I think that is absolutely part of the problem. If you look at the history of protracted wars, which we are making a call that this is, so often having different political aims that cannot be quickly and easily met and often change over time make it harder to find a diplomatic resolution. And that in itself continues to fuel these wars and make them continue. And I think that's very much what we're seeing here, where initially some of the objectives that the U.S. put out were things like regime change. Then it turned into Iran's defense industrial base degradation. And now it is very much focused on denuclearization, but at the same time, a lot of the actual emphasis of action is on the Strait of Hormuz instead. So we are seeing this vacillating set of objectives that makes it really hard, particularly when you compare it to what Iran's objective is, which at the end of the day is just survival.
Your projections are pretty scary here in this essay, Becca. As you already mentioned, the ongoing war will see repeated cycles of fighting, but you go on to say each round of violence will be bloodier. You see escalation, not just longer endurance, but escalation in this conflict.
I see adaptation. I think this is one of the things that happens when you have these pauses and these opportunities to essentially rebuild and sit back and say, what is my adversary doing? What strategy have they adopted? And they try and change based on that. This is very much what we've seen in places like Ukraine, where Russia and Ukraine have innovated and adapted to each other's, different tactics and strategies. And that has, while it has kept Russia from overrunning Ukraine after its wanton invasion, it has also fueled and continued the war. And I think here we are already starting to see that, where you can see different phases of this current US-Iran conflict. They are changing in emphasis, where the focus is on different geography, different domains, different tactics. And I think we will continue to see that as things go on. So we're not necessarily saying that there's going to be a sharp escalation, but we are going to see changes in tactics, and sometimes those can be very much read and perceived as an escalation.
It's interesting, Becca. We've had folks on air and talking to them and said, well, it's about time the U.S. did something. This has not been a 1 or 2 year thing. This has been going on for decades. The animosity, their words, from Iran to the United States. So it is complicated. If you take a look at the history between the United States and Iran, does that just mean that it's going to take a while to figure out the way forward?
Yeah, it absolutely would. And it will require direct talks at some point to actually have true diplomacy and true negotiations. And thus far, the preference has been for the U.S. and Iran to act through third parties. And that might make sense when we're trying to negotiate something like a ceasefire or an interim pause to the fighting. But at some point, they are going to need to unpack a lot of these problems and find ways to do true compromise. But I think another thing to note as we are talking about is the United States trapped in a potential forever war is the potential for this to go in a few different directions. The United States is remarkably good at war initiation, that is starting wars, but it is notoriously bad at war termination. Oftentimes you see that the United States doesn't get scared, but they do get tired. And eventually there is the emphasis on just walking away. And that is something that we could see President Trump do, but that is not going to resolve the underlying issues and therefore still set the conditions for continued conflict.
You can see why Becca was so instrumental in war planning and war gaming when she was at the Pentagon, and we're so lucky to have her now at Bloomberg. Part of your charge, Becca, is geoeconomics, and I'm wondering what you're expecting this week. We talked about this a bit earlier with the Treasury Secretary promising this 1-2 punch, not constant kinetic action, but in fact an economic stranglehold coupled with the blockade in the Strait. Does that lead to a breakthrough? This waiting game leads to what?
I think it leads to more of the same, in part because it's going to take time for some of those economic tools to actually have an impact. And that sometimes runs counter to the military tools that they are relying on for some of their economic strategies. Here, I'm really referencing the blockade, where we have seen all of these U.S. ships at sea for months and months on end, with large discussions over, frankly, how sailors are able to maintain their mental health and their well-being. And that means that if the blockade is going to be in place for a really long time, there are going to be larger readiness issues that the U.S. military is going to need to contend with if it needs to be in support of some of these economic strategies.
Which leads me to ask you, in your story, you write, protracted wars tend to expand either geographically or in the number of belligerents. I mean, we've already seen other areas of the Middle East get involved in this. Does this continue to broaden in your view?
I think it most likely does. It doesn't necessarily mean that it broadens entirely all the time, but I think we've already seen, the Red Sea start to become an area of geography. We've seen the United States fire on ships as far as the Indian Ocean in part of its blockade enforcement. So again, if the emphasis is on these economic tools, we might see the blockade go further and further out of the Middle East to try and get after, Iranian oil traversing around the globe. So there's an opportunity for expansion. But I mean, not to be too gloom and doom, even though that is my charge, if you look at the history of world wars, this is often how they start. They expand slowly and then all of a sudden.
Well, the references to history here in the Vietnam War in this essay are really important.
This is something we talked about early. Like, does this become a world war? I mean, China, I think about the role of China, the relationship China has with Iran. Like, how do you guys talk about that a lot? Is the government potentially thinking that this is where it goes? U.S. allies thinking where it goes?
I think everyone's worried about it, but I think, right now there is this commitment to try and keep it as contained as possible. And I think you mentioned China. I don't think China wants to join the fray in any form. That said, China is reportedly providing Iran with some material to continue to prosecute the conflict. But, again, if we see the U.S. doubling down on economic strategies, that means that they might have to go after China in some way because they are such a strong partner to Iran. And there's an open question whether the United States wants to do that, particularly at this period of time where Donald Trump is gearing up for his upcoming meeting with Xi Jinping and wants to continue to have the level of detente that the U.S. and China have had throughout his presidency.
This keeps coming up, and it's going to be absolutely huge if the president decides to go there with the summit on the way. We talked about swapping out the Lincoln a little bit earlier. Becca, we've got another aircraft carrier. I believe it's the George Washington that's on the way. But we've also seen a lot of equipment surged into the region recently. Bombers that are now being stationed in England, air-to-air refuelers. Are we preparing for something else during this lull?
I mean, I think there's always the emphasis on trying to prepare for what might happen. But let's think about what some of those platforms might be needed for. Those air-to-air refuelers are really necessary as the United States continues to enforce the blockade, continues to quietly guide commercial ships through the Strait of Hormuz, and they are largely doing that by air. So, those aerial refuelers are needed for that. And the bombers are a rotational presence in the UK. UK. And so in many respects, you can read this as steady state, the same way you could read the swap out of the Abraham Lincoln for the George Washington as being part of routine operations. But we are currently in a conflict. We are currently in a war. So it is really hard not to see any of these activities as some form of preparedness. But preparedness does not mean that it will happen or that there will be, a big escalation. But we do continue to see the United States double down on being ready to prosecute the war if it needs to go hot again, but also continuing the blockade and continuing its efforts to escort the ships through the strait.
Diplomacy and concessions haven't worked. Becca, only got about 25, 30 seconds. Why should we think that they're going to work anytime soon?
Because bombing into submission doesn't work, and that only has destabilizing effects for the Middle East, for the United States, which has lost an enormous amount of materiel, as well as for the global economy. At some point, this needs to get figured out because what's happening can't continue.
Her insight, unbelievable. Becca Wasser, love talking with you.
Becca.
Thank you so much. We are up to date on all of this. Highly recommend everybody check out this essay. It is on the Bloomberg and at Bloomberg.com.
That's right. A surprise from the world's most valuable company, NVIDIA, revealing a major stake in SpaceX. We've got that and a deep dive into the markets next on Bloomberg.
Thank you for joining us live on Bloomberg This Weekend. I'm Lisa Mateo. We're going to update you on today's story, and this one just breaking a lockdown. It has been lifted at Virginia State University after a shooting on the campus. Now, the school says 5 people suffered gunshot wounds outside of its residence halls and were taken to area hospitals. One of the individuals is in critical condition. Now, a significant law enforcement presence that does remain at the scene at the campus while this investigation does continue. Over to company news. Anthropic telling prospective investors its second quarter revenue jumped at least 14-fold versus the same period a year ago. According to documents seen by Bloomberg, the company reported a preliminary revenue figure of more than $11.5 billion in its latest completed quarter. And sources telling Bloomberg Jane Street posted roughly $15 billion of losses in July, its first monthly slump in about a decade. It comes as AI-focused hedge funds situational awareness dragged down asset prices across equity markets. Jane Street invests in situational awareness and is wrong way bets in Asian equity markets. And Harvard University's endowment has profited from an early bet on SpaceX. In its 13F filing on Friday, Harvard management disclosed a $2.2 billion stake in Elon Musk's giant rocket company. It's one of the largest endowment holders of that stock. And in sports, the PGA Tour's first FedEx Cup playoffs continue with the FedEx St. Jude Championship in Memphis. Topping the leaderboard, Scotty Scheffler at 11 under par, followed by Victor Hovland and Sung Jae Im tied at 8 under par. Joe and Carol, I'm not sure if you know, but I am known for mistakenly saying names wrong in golf. So I breezed through that one. That was a good one.
Very well.
You got to do the hockey names. Those are
No,
the ones that always...
I always find the tennis names tough.
Yes. Well, that's true too, yeah.
That's pretty tricky for me. I think you did it perfectly.
Listen to Lisa Mateo read the phone book and be enticed by it. I don't worry about the names.
There's nobody like her. I totally agree. All right, Lisa, thank you so much. Well done, well done. Hey, we got to talk a little bit about the markets this past week. The U.S. government selling 30-year bonds at the highest interest rate in about a quarter of a century, coming just days after an equally impressive 10-year auction. Yeah, we got to, pay for that debt and all that good stuff. Long-term yields, though, they definitely felt it surging past 5% this year. Investors are starting to wonder if the Fed will be forced to keep interest rates elevated for years to come. Joining us now to discuss it all is PNC Chief Investment Officer Amanda Agati, joining Joe and me. Amanda, good to have you here on the weekend. A lot of things to go. When you think about the week, we've been spending a lot of time talking about the U.S. war in Iran. There's a lot of things that continue to come at investors. What's top of mind for you? Is it the auctions? Is it what the Fed does as we get ready for minutes next week? What is it?
Well, it's great to be with you both. Thanks so much for having me. I think the thing that's top of mind for me is really the impressive resilience in both the underlying earnings growth backdrop as well as the economic growth backdrop. There's still a lot of purple haze swirling around, but it seems as if the market and investors are largely focused on the fundamentals, which is a healthy thing. And for Q2 earnings season to come in That's such an impressive upside surprise. 50% earnings growth year over year, not a typo, right? I think it speaks volumes about the strength of the underlying market at these levels, even at these valuation levels. And it sets the stage for a pretty strong second half too. So I'm focused on the fundamentals, trying to dial down the noise, as it were, from all that purple haze.
Well, geez, I don't know if it's purple haze or manic depression, Amanda, the way the market's been acting lately. Everybody is kind of worried about a real correction happening, a real 10% decline in the S&P 500, which just finished its third straight week higher. You know, we had that whole situational awareness freak out, the momentum stocks.
They're buying again, though.
Chip stock, but they're all almost back up to where they were, Amanda. Do we still need to correct?
It's a great question, and you threw out a lot of technical terms, right? Manic depression, right? Freak out, frenzy.
Yes.
There's been a lot of that. Investor sentiment and investor psyche has been through the ringer on a year-to-date basis. And again, it goes back to all this purple haze, right? How do we price all the uncertainty that's coming from the purple haze? I don't think we necessarily need a correction. Corrections, for what it's worth, tend to be signals of a very healthy, functioning market. Not that I'm wishing for a correction necessarily, but we are starting to break some records again for how long we've gone with pretty low volatility and without a meaningful market correction. I think the second half of the year is a pretty strong setup, as I said, from a fundamental perspective. I would not underappreciate the volatility that may come leading into the midterm. So that could create a little bit of noise. It could create a little bit of a correction or a downdraft. We'd be using it as an opportunity to reposition portfolios for sure.
You know, Morgan Stanley's Mike Wilson sees earnings reviving momentum trade. You've got that view. We, though, did some reporting, too, that we have had such strong earnings. It's going to be really tough comparisons, and that momentum cannot continue, or is not at least expected to. So that's a different set of fundamentals. Does there need to be potentially a reprice off of that?
I don't think there needs to be a reprice per se. I mean, I would say for the record, we've had a little bit of repricing since the beginning of the year. Earnings growth has been so strong that the E has been outpacing the P in forward PE multiples. So we're trading at a more, well, reasonable, I guess is a relative term, but a more reasonable PE today than we were at the beginning of the year. That said, the market is not cheap, of course. I mean, we get that. There are still pockets of opportunity. It looks like for Q3 earnings season, it will be the fifth quarter in a row where we have been seeing a trend of positive revisions, setting an ever higher bar, and then hopefully beating it. But you're right to call out that this momentum can't last forever and that comparisons do get tougher from here. And so, you know, maybe 2026 is peak earnings. I don't want to get bearish with you. I feel very good about where we are right now, but it does look as if the setup for 2027, I guess it is pretty early, but for 2027, the year-over-year earnings growth is going to slow. It's hard to argue that mid-teens is really, you know, a market-moving event, though. There's still a decent amount of strength, even if we get to that level next year, too.
You know, Carol started us off by talking about interest rates. I don't know how you're feeling about this, Amanda. 5.25 on the 30, 4.69 on the 10. A lot of economists are telling us that a 5% on the 10-year is inevitable. Is that what brings the rally to an end?
You know, it's such a great question. We've been getting this question a lot lately. There's no question that hitting a 5% level is a psychological threshold, barrier, headwind to markets. But I think, you know, in past cycles, we've seen that historical relationship be very strong, that correlation of once you hit that level, equity markets start to struggle. I don't want to say dangerous words, it's different this time, but it feels like that relationship is breaking down a little bit, if for no other reason than the backdrop just continues to be so strong. I think there are other fundamental drivers for why rates are market-based rates without, you know, Fed doing anything, are moving higher. Certainly, the inflation backdrop is warm, maybe not hot, but it is certainly warm. The risk premium at the long end is certainly moving higher. I think that's driving the 30-year, certainly. I think duration risk is pretty significant in this environment, so you have to entice investors to go long here. But again, I think the deficits and debt level situation are more what's driving this as opposed to kind of historical relationships. It matters this time. It matters in this market cycle as opposed to past market cycles. But I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that the equity market starts to falter here.
Hey, Amanda, you mentioned the Fed. We've got minutes coming from the last Fed meeting, the FOMC minutes. They're going to be released this coming Wednesday in an environment where we've got a Fed chair, Kevin Warsh, who certainly wants to communicate differently, at least so far. What are you looking out for? It feels like the minutes take on kind of a higher value, if you will, in this environment, new Fed environment.
Well, there's no question he wants to take a different approach. For what it's worth, I think that's actually healthy. For years and years, we've been fixated on what color tie the Fed chair is wearing, right? How he shifts in his stance at the press conference to try and figure out what the path forward is likely to be. So I would love to see the Fed get out of the driver's seat as it relates to, how the equity market in particular moves from here. I think the reality is the more they pull back, though, in the short run, it's just going to create some noise and volatility. So, we know the Fed is very much divided in terms of the path forward here. It's hard to make a call. But based on the data that we're looking at, we do not believe that they should be hiking in this environment, that some of what is happening here, again, dangerous word, transitory, right? That word didn't work out so well the last time. So maybe I'll say temporary. But we just don't see the Fed needing to make a big move in September.
Boy, Amanda, you look too young to be a Jimi Hendrix fan. Purple Haze, I thought we were riffing here. Thanks for being with us on Bloomberg on this third stone from the sun. Two of New York's biggest sports teams are splitting up. We've got that next. Alongside Carol Massar, I'm Joe Mathieu. This is Bloomberg This Weekend. Welcome back to Bloomberg This Weekend. I'm Joe Mathieu alongside Carol Massar, businessman and venture capitalist Josh Kushner, and former Disney CEO Bob Iger. You heard about this. You're talking about this week.
Oh, yeah. Big story this
Getting
week.
into sports business, teaming up to buy the Lakers, the LA Lakers, for a record-breaking $12.5 billion. That is the highest ever price for a sports team.
These prices are expensive. He likes the Clippers too, or he liked it. So it's
Well,
interesting
maybe
to
not
see.
anymore.
Not anymore. He's got there's a new team in time.
Yeah.
Well, the pair had been looking to acquire an NBA expansion team in Las Vegas, but pivoted to the Lakers and current majority stakeholder Mark Walter. For more on this, we turn to Randall Williams. He's been covering all the twists and turns. Actually, there weren't any because this just kind of came out of nowhere. He's Bloomberg News U.S. sports reporter, co-host of the Business of Sports podcast, which you can check out as well. Randall, we have been talking about this a lot this week. This was a deal that got done so quickly, a hefty price. You talked to Bob Iger. Tell us more.
Sure. So as you said, Bob Iger and Josh Kushner were looking at the NBA expansion team in Las Vegas, and then the price was getting high, is what Iger told me. And at some point, a little birdie or an intermediary suggested or told Bob Iger and Josh Kushner, hey, you should go look at the Lakers. And sure enough, that had to be on Saturday or Sunday. And some 72 hours later, maybe 90 hours later, they had a deal.
They were looking in Vegas.
Yeah.
They were going to start a team from scratch, Randall. What happened?
I really think that there's a Walmart family involved, or a Walton family involved. And there's a couple other groups involved in Las Vegas, including Bill Foley, who's the owner of the Golden Knights. And then you have Mark Lazary and a group known as the Las Vegas Jacks. When you have that many groups involved, naturally, that competition is going to drive the price high.
Yeah.
Now, Josh Kushner and Bob Iger were considered favorites. However, if they say it's high, I can only imagine that I would guesstimate that it's over $10 billion.
I got to go from the Lakers to the Knicks. I'm a Knicks fan. I'm sorry. I got to go there, guys. Yeah. And Randall and I, we were at the New York Knicks parade, so we did that together, too. We had a great time out there. But now all this, the Knicks moving closer to this New York Rangers spinoff. I mean, what's going on? Is this going through?
I think so. I think, the Knicks or Madison Square Garden Sports Corporation is targeting separating the Rangers business from the Knicks business. And so what this will mean is that Madison Square Garden Sports Corporation will become the Madison Square Garden Knicks Corporation, and then there will be a separate Rangers business. What's expected to happen is this is going to extract value. This is going to figure out the difference between the Knicks business and the Rangers business. And, James Dolan has said that he has no plans of selling either team. But once you see the value of those teams, who's to say he couldn't get $2 billion for 20% of the team, or maybe even 15% of the team?
Enter Jeff Bezos.
I know.
Not to be left out of this game, as Randall reports. Fenway Sports Group from beautiful Boston selling a minority stake in Liverpool. So he's got 30% of the team or the franchise, Randall. Is this...
Delivered next day.
Yeah, by drone.
Just saying.
Is this a vanity piece or an investment?
Yeah.
I think it's a bit of both, but the reality is that any team in the world that Jeff Bezos wants, he can have.
Well,
at some point, when you have as much money as Jeff Bezos does, someone could not be looking to sell, and he would say, "Name your price," and they would say $25 billion, and he would just write a check. And so the fact that this is, a 30% stake shows, I think there's some interest, but I don't think he's going to be involved on the day-to-day. This is something I think that is very small in his world.
You know what's interesting? I think the FT had a piece too, and we talked about this on air with David Weston, of course, formerly head of ABC News. He knows Bob Iger, but we were talking about this idea, Randall, and I'm curious what you guys are hearing, that the interest in sports teams kind of resilient to AI, artificial intelligence, as we think about it in a world where we don't know, feel like a lot's going to be impacted. Sports, maybe not so much. Live sports, certainly.
Yeah, I doubt it. I doubt it right now. I think that AI will enhance sports experiences. You think about walking into a new arena. If you're a season ticket holder, is your experience now customized? Does the arena or does your app say, "Welcome back, Carol. We'd love to have you eat the barbecue chicken. You had it last time." Like sort of those customized experiences is what I expect. Now, long term, if someone's able to create a technology-based league, something with robots or something that I think is we're far away from. That's the only threat that I see, but it's not in sight. It's a fantasy.
Randall, I got to ask you, are you okay? Because there was so much sports breaking over the headlines just keep coming out yesterday.
He's still in his pajamas.
Randall's always
in your pajamas, aren't you, Randall?
Am I okay? Let me tell you.
I'm not okay.
When this news broke on Wednesday, I got a call maybe 2 minutes before Ramona Shelburne at ESPN story went live, and it just took over my day. And then yesterday, it had to be around 6 p.m. that the Knicks and Rangers announced that they were separating their business, and I quickly did that too. So I don't need any news to break for the next week or so. Everybody just settle down and let's get ready for the NFL season.
I think we wanted you to come in studio, and Tim Stenevec, my co-host during the week, and he was like, I think you messaged him like, if everybody would stop messaging me, I could get to Bloomberg.
I did say that.
You did.
I did say that.
Just leave me alone.
I was trying to get to Lex around noon, and I did not get there until 2:30.
You got the best around. He's like the coolest cucumber at Bloomberg News. You got this.
We talked about this purchase of the Lakers, and he came in wearing a jersey. We were blown away.
Yeah, I know.
He came in prepared to play.
Everybody wants to be Randall Williams.
Well, time out
I
for
don't know
you.
about that, but thank you all.
Time out. Take a break. Go back to bed.
Randall, thank you. Great to have you with us. Big bucks in sports. I don't know what they want to do with all these teams.
Well,
they want to show off and bring their friends to games, right?
Think about the broadcast rights, right? I mean, there's a lot of value, and they just keep going up. And if you think about in a world where streaming's competing, content's creating, people still show up when it comes to live games.
Here, and they'll keep streaming no matter the AI.
Yeah.
We're coming up on 9 a.m. in New York. How is that possible? We've got much more for you here on the only weekend show that matters.
Do stay
Bloomberg
here
this weekend.
Coming up on Bloomberg this weekend, President Trump ratchets up the economic pressure on Iran.
Pretty soon I'll be declaring the Hormuz Strait a territory of the United States.
But Iran is fighting back, striking more ships in the strait. Who will blink first?
New this morning, the Prime Minister of India laying out big economic ambitions in an Independence Day speech.
I want to shake up the country a bit. I also want to shake up the strength of the nation.
His plans for AI, tech, and banking.
Plus, Bloomberg goes up close with an autonomous drone swarm.
It's very futuristic and highly unreliable tech at the moment.
What it means for the future of warfare and human involvement in picking targets.
Welcome to Bloomberg This Weekend. We are fully caffeinated now and coming to you live from Bloomberg World Headquarters in New York. We let the other two go on vacation, and thanks to Christina Ruffini and David Gura for letting us sit in their chair. I'm Joe Mathieu, alongside the lovely and talented Carol Massar.
Back at you, and also Lisa Mateo. Folks, it is Saturday, August 15th, and we want to get a check on some of the top headlines on this weekend and on this Saturday. Over to you, Lisa.
You got it. Let's start with breaking news out of Virginia State University. This is after a shooting outside of one of its residence halls that injured 5 people. A recent lockdown, it has been lifted as this investigation does continue, but a heavy police presence remains on campus. One person is in critical condition. We'll keep you updated on that. In other news, President Donald Trump downplayed the toll of American sailors enduring nearly 9 months at sea on the USS Abraham Lincoln. He spoke to reporters before flying to New York for an event.
That ship is moving right now, or very shortly, and it's being replaced with another very similar ship.
Has the deployment gone on too long?
No. Not nearly long enough. Thank you, everybody.
Concerns have escalated about mental health and supply issues aboard the aircraft carrier supporting U.S. operations against Iran. According to multiple reports, the Pacific-based aircraft carrier USS George Washington has begun heading toward the Middle East as a replacement. At that event on Long Island that was attended by the president, Trump acknowledged that he's used the U.S. military, quote, a little bit more than I wanted to. He jokingly added that he would soon declare the Strait of Hormuz territory of the United States. The president also used the rally to praise a new crime report.
Today, I'm thrilled to announce that the FBI has just released a new uniform crime report showing that in 2025, we achieved the single largest reduction in violent crime in American history.
Well, in other news, the lawyers for Luigi Mangione are looking to dismiss the New York State murder case against him, citing double jeopardy. It comes after the 28-year-old admitted he killed United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson in 2024. He also changed his plea to guilty to 2 federal stalking charges. One of Mangione's attorneys spoke outside federal court in Manhattan.
New York law does not permit a person to be prosecuted and punished twice for the exact same crime under a statute that governs successive prosecutions.
Now, U.S. Attorney Jamie McDonald described Mangione's crime as calculated and premeditated. Mangione, he read a statement where he said he planned the shooting after years of severe pain from a broken back and obstacles in dealing with the healthcare system. And the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, they say it has no intention of dropping the state case, with a trial scheduled to start on September 8th. Joe and Carol, over to you.
Well, President Trump and senior White House officials are doubling down on economic pressures on Iran as they try to find a way to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. And now President Trump is floating a new idea.
And after we finish defeating Iran, which is being very badly defeated, pretty soon I'll be declaring the Hormuz Strait a territory of the United States.
We connect now with Wendy Benjaminson, my colleague in Washington, Bloomberg senior Washington editor. Wendy, it's great to see you. If Canada is not going to be the 51st state, will Hormuz be?
Well, there's also Greenland and Venezuela and, a couple of other places that might be the 51st state.
Who knows?
Right. So it'll be the Strait of America. Even he couldn't say that with a straight face. So I'm kind of assuming that was a little bit of humor there. Yeah. What wasn't humor was his refusal in that same rally to apologize for the high gas prices that Americans are feeling at the pump now, nor was he concerned if the war went on beyond the midterms. So despite deep concerns among Republicans with 11 weeks to go before the congressional elections, Trump seems to think that everything's fine and we're now just going to keep going the way we are.
Wendy, I was going to say to you, does the president know that the midterms are coming? Is he aware of that?
Well, that was a campaign rally for a Republican in Nassau County, on Long Island off New York. So he should.
How's the internals within the White House? You asked, I thought about Caroline Leavitt leaving, and I thought that was surprising. She just had a baby, came back. If you were going to leave, you probably would have done it before you came back. I mean, what's your read on what's going inside the White House right now in the executive branch?
Well, from what what we've read and what we've reported, I mean, there is a lot of worry about the midterms. There is a lot of that. I mean, who knows? Caroline Leavitt, she does have 2 small babies at home. Maybe she thought she could do both and then decided, I can't have a 90-hour-a-week job and 2 small children and do everything she wanted to do. So good on her for making a life balance choice, actually. But I do think there is a deep concern everywhere except the Oval Office, apparently, about the midterms and what Republicans are going to fare. Because remember, if Democrats win control of both houses of Congress, which is possible now, it's they're going to be investigating him. They probably won't move on a lot of legislation that are sort of the liberal priorities because they know he'll veto them. But they can make the last 2 years very, very uncomfortable for him.
You know what they say about Caroline Leavitt, Wendy, and we've talked about this, that she and Susie Wiles, Chief of Staff, are the 2 people who can say no to Donald Trump.
Yes.
Who can say that you need to reconsider. Every president needs to have that check. Without it, what does Donald Trump become?
Well, I think we are seeing what Donald Trump can become. I mean, look at the difference between the first term when former Marine General John Kelly was his chief of staff and was able to block access to the White House from some of the crazier voices, not to the White House, but to the Oval Office. He could keep people out who would change Trump's mind after he made a decision and things like that. We sort of expected Susie Wiles to do that, but she doesn't seem to be. Yeah. And the idea seems to be let Trump be Trump. So it's a very, very fluid situation. And that's, what was happening now. The military campaign against Iran is not forcing Iran to capitulate or give up their nuclear program or anything, as many, many other administrations learned they can't do. They won't capitulate. And so now they're going to try to up that economic pressure. And that's like, who knows where that idea came from? It could be something that Trump thought, well, if I can't do it with bombs, I'll do it with money, which would be sort of on brand for him. But we don't know where the idea came from.
Hey, Wendy, just to wrap up, we were all talking on Friday about what U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said in terms of some extreme economic measures against Iran. Just heads up as we look at the new week, are we expecting something anytime soon? Just quickly.
Well, yes, Bessent said we would see things next week. We would see an economic weapon program, if you will, unleashed on Iran. He used the superlatives that Trump does, the biggest that we've ever seen. But we don't know what they are. I mean, Iran is already under more than 2,000 sanctions. The Strait of Hormuz, the Persian Gulf is blocked to Iranian ports. So we don't, through the naval blockade. So who knows what else they could do. But Bessent did say he would say something this week.
All right. Well, we will be listening out for it. Hey, Wendy, always appreciate it. Wendy Benjamin, she is senior DC editor here at Bloomberg News. Just talking about the war in Iran, top of mind certainly for President Trump. But a year ago, it was a bit of a different war.
Isn't that right? On August 15th, I couldn't believe this, 2025, it's already been a year.
I know.
He was in Alaska meeting with Vladimir Putin with the goal of reaching an agreement on ending the war in Ukraine. 365 days later, no tangible progress. Joining us now is a former U.S. congressman, former Republican congressman, and friend of the program, Denver Riggleman. He is now CEO of Rig Technologies. And let me tell you, Carol, there's no such thing as a boring interview with Denver. It's good to see you on a Saturday morning, my friend. And thank you for coming on the program. You've spent a lot of time in Ukraine. You joined us from Odessa. We talked when you were in a bomb shelter. Can you imagine that was a year ago, Denver? This is the war the president was going to end on day one. And some are wondering if it will last longer than the war with Iran. What do you think?
I think it will. I mean, if you're looking at this, what's interesting, it's so funny, Joe, I was in Odessa in a bunker, and the August 15th one-year anniversary today of the Putin-Trump summit in Anchorage was only 10 weeks after Operation Spiderweb. And I think a lot of people failed to actually put that together, is that Trump gave Putin a lot of legitimacy after what a lot of people thought with Operation Spiderweb was really the first time we saw that Ukraine could actually win the war. And I think at that point, instead of the U.S. capitulating to Putin, they probably should have, and I would have if I was POTUS, I would have been funding Ukraine at a much higher level, seeing what's happening with what's going on with Russia, specifically their economy, and what Ukraine can do with drones. So it's incredible to me that a lot of people might have expected something to come out of this summit. But if we look at past performance as indicative of future performance, Trump, even up to that time on August 15th, hadn't done really anything against Putin except lip service. And again, when you're a year on, we're in the same exact position. We got a stalemate really with drone warfare between Ukraine and Russia. And people can try to, on each side of the problem set, say, oh, Russia has the advantage, Ukraine has the advantage. But sadly, we're in a position where you have somebody like Putin, a dictator, really a murderous thug, right, that was given legitimacy by the United States. And I think we're going to look back on that really with disdain, but also history will judge it pretty harshly.
Congressman, I do wonder, too, there are times that President Trump is certainly critical of President Putin as well. What is your read in terms of how President Trump really sees President Putin? Is it friend or foe?
I think it depends on what, and I hate to be so blunt on this, Carol, I think it actually depends on the financial incentive that Trump has at that particular time. If you look at Ukraine now, and you see sort of a thawing or a warming with Trump and Zelensky or Trump and Ukraine, or you don't see quite as harsh rhetoric. When you're looking at drone warfare, you see a major portion of Trump's family is invested in drone programs. If you're looking at Power Us, if you're looking at Usual Machines, you're looking at Extend drones. You're also looking at Vulcan Elements, right? Some of those that are actually attached to drone warfare or drone production. I think what you're seeing is that since you do have the Trump family and associates and defense contractors interacting that way, I think that's why you're seeing some of the thawing there, Carol, when you're talking about Trump going after Putin a bit and also seemingly starting to warm towards Ukraine.
They always say follow the money.
That's exactly right. I want to tap an area of expertise in Denver. Riggleman, before he was a member of Congress, he was in the Air Force and spent many years as an Air Force intelligence officer, which brings us to a story that caught our attention this week. Congressman, the White House out with a memo around heightening cyber attacks against our adversaries abroad by actually tapping private enterprise. I'm looking at the presidential memoranda right now, expanding capabilities to combat transnational cyber-enabled crime. We're going on the offense. Denver, is the U.S. currently engaged in cyber wars that the public is not seeing?
Well, not only was I Air Force intelligence, Joe and Carol, as you know, I also worked in NSA off and on for 16 years. I was actually billeted in it's called a 4,000 billeted NSA as an Air Force officer, where I did operations not only with, I would say, acquisitions, but also with operations. So I did this specific job. I can't tell you the 3-letter and 4-letter organizations inside of NSA that actually conducted these operations. But of course, we've engaged in offensive cyber operations at some time in our past, right, Joe and Carol? I think what we're seeing right now, though, it's one of the most dangerous things I've ever seen, because with the DOJ and DHS in charge, instead of the intelligence community doing deconfliction against state actors, I would humbly submit you're seeing leaders that are woefully unprepared. If you're looking at Mark Wayne Mullen and Blanche, woefully unprepared for this type of mission to allow literally digital letters of marque for corporations, right, to attack entities with a presumption that they're not state actors. I think people need to read the presidential memorandum. You have to have authorities and certifications. You have to look at intelligence gain loss. What are you actually gaining? Or is it a one-time attack? What are you giving to those who are attacking you that can see your attack vectors and modalities? And also, the thing that really bothers me, Joe and Carol, is this, right? Who's benefiting? Right now you have private contractors that are incentivized to identify targets to make more money with the private companies they're engaging with. And who are those companies backed by? And by the way, are there U.S. entities that will be identified in some conspiratorial notion that they're being backed by the globalist government or foreign entities, which now you're looking at bizarre conspiracy theories of stolen elections and foreign entities that are somehow in every single portion of the government or in corporations. So this is probably, since we've started, one of the most short-sighted and maybe one of the most devastating things when it comes to cyber warfare and cyber defense.
Another sobering thing on this Saturday morning, to be quite honest. What's the danger? Let's go there, Congressman. What's the worst outcome we could see as a result of something like this?
You know, when you're talking about a private corporation, and listen, private corporations should be sharing in some sense how they're being attacked, right? You're looking at, oh goodness, there's so many things that I want to, but you're looking at managing the risk based on sharing how your networks are being targeted. But if you have private corporations, there's a presumption that a group targeting them is not a state actor without real intelligence to identify that. My biggest fear is some private corporation with massive resources. You know, I was fortunate to be able to visit JP Morgan's Chase Operations Center when I was in Congress, which was as robust, if not more, than some of the intelligence monitoring centers that we have. But if you have private corporations able to engage in this and they're going through a non-talented intelligence framework where they're getting sort of the go-ahead to do certain things, my goodness, what if they hit infrastructure for another country, Carol? What if, you know, we don't know what those downstream effects are if you don't have proper intelligence to frame the battle space. If you don't know all of the alternate, what they call target modalities, which is how many downstream effects are there for that specific attack? And does that attack expose our capabilities, which can be used against us in the future? And again, that's why this bothers me so much as an intelligence professional.
Wow. Okay, so add AI now.
Yeah.
As another bit of gasoline on the fire. And I'll just mention the fact that Denver is running an AI company now. This has changed the game for cyber warfare and for cyber security, Denver. We're watching CrowdStrike and Palo hit a new high, it seems like, every day. How is AI changing the nature and capabilities of what the government is asking these private companies to do?
You know, when you're looking at things called polymorphic threats, we look at the ability to AI to be utilized in a way that's much faster and sometimes much more effective than human-specific hacking efforts or penetration efforts. I think what we have now is you're literally creating a massive new market where even companies like mine, if we're building any type of capability, we got to worry about every single cybersecurity. You should anyway. But I do think it creates a brand new market in cybersecurity companies defensively and offensively based on the efficacy of AI, but also on how these threats are actually viewed. You're going to have consulting classes, new companies. You're going to have the U.S. is going to have to increase their spending on cyber defense and cyber offense. I mean, all of this is going to happen. And in some ways, you know, it's interesting. You wonder that with this type of craziness will come massive, again, innovation, but also massive business lines. So again, who benefits from this? It's hard for me to get my arms around the fact that we're just not increasing resources to the IC, the intelligence community, for this problem set, and increasing integration and operations with private companies, which was something I actually begged for 10 years ago. So that's what's incredible about this. Even in Congress on the Financial Services Committee with McHenry, Joe and Carol, and he was the committee chair, or he was the ranker. You know, we were talking about how do we actually, and that's why we went and visited with JP Morgan Chase, is how do we actually integrate all of this where private companies are sharing information? That's a good thing. We have good things that maybe are good intentions, but when the policy is written by people who don't understand the downstream effects of this because they don't have the talent to do that, now you have this issue where it might even be good intentioned, but it doesn't have the right effect because you don't have the right people writing this type of policy. So that's where I think we're going with all this. I think we're in just a very bizarre dynamic, but also maybe very short-sighted policy change here that's just hard for any real intelligence professional to get their arms around. Just up the frickin' funding, you know, for the IC and for operations integration. Why are we letting DHS and DOJ making choices that could actually affect NSA and CIA operations overseas, or have state actors look at us as somebody to attack even more because we're irresponsible in how we're utilizing those capabilities?
Congressman, you talk about sharing of information. President Trump wants to share information at a cost. Get his tweets earlier than the rest.
You see what it costs?
Yeah, $60,000, $100,000 for just microseconds faster of access. Hey, listen, hedge funds, if it's microseconds, that's real money. I'm not saying hedge funds are doing it or paying
some
out.
Are.
Well, right?
So in some news organizations?
Yes. Right? So what do you make of this? You were a politician before you re-entered private life. Is this legal in a world where I feel like every day we're asking, when it comes to certain moves, either out of the White House or the administration, whether or not this is legal? So love your take on this.
I think once you start codifying insider trading and actually saying, hey, if you're rich, you're going to do a lot better than everybody else in the U.S., I think that would be a pretty powerful messaging statement for anybody running against Trump or anybody that who's attached to him. That's how I think a lot of people would view it. I mean, already, if you look at Congress, I was there. I was on the Financial Services Committee. People can look at, there's no way I'm doing stock trading or anything like that if I'm in Congress. To me, that was just, it's hard to explain, Joe and Carol. It felt so grotesque to me with the knowledge that I had on the Financial Services Committee that I would leverage that, right, to make myself more wealthy, right? And I think what you're looking at right now is companies are going to jump all over this if they have the financial means to do so. But me and, when you talk about the people around me, we own whiskey distilleries, I talk to them. There's nobody there who's going to be paying $100,000 to get True Social posts first so they can engage in trading at speed to maximize what they're making based on tips that you already have. But I'm going to bring up something else. I think that might surprise people, that it's already happened. Mm-hmm. If they're paying for a post before it happens, he's already thought about the post, and the people who already have benefited from it are benefiting before the post even hits, or you're paying for it beforehand.
Wow.
And so it's almost this downstream effect. You have the people who are really the insiders doing best. Yeah. Second are the people who pay for this pre-post so they can do a little bit better. And third are the people trying to react to it after the fact. I mean, I think there's three tiers here, with the first tier being the person who's actually getting paid, which is the president himself through his own companies. Now he's benefiting not only on the True Social posts he's being paid for, but three specific tiers of trading with individuals who are already aware of what's happening anyhow.
So you're subscribing, right, Denver?
What's that, buddy?
You're subscribing, right?
Yeah, I've already got, I'm all over it, man.
I'm kidding.
I'm spending $1 million a day.
Yeah, right. Well, it's interesting too, Carol, because if you look, we follow the True Social, it's maybe 1 out of 50 might actually be market moving. There was a lot of AI splashing around last night. Denver, it's great to have you. His debut on Bloomberg this weekend. It's kind of big to get up this morning, and thank you for talking with us. Former Congressman Denver Riggleman. He does run a distillery now, too, Silverback Distillery. The man, he's a Renaissance man.
I love it. He's got his hands in a lot of different things. It's fascinating.
The future of war is here. We were just bumping up against it. But this is a little bit different with an AI-enabled drone swarm. That's when a group of unmanned aerial vehicles that use artificial intelligence to talk to each other, share data, and coordinate attacks with human oversight. Well, at least for now.
There's a leader drone that has the brain, and then it's got its 3 followers that you can use as your munitions to send.
If you're with us on Bloomberg Radio, we were showing video from a Pentagon test of drone swarms earlier this year. Troops have a remote, and the drones take over, Carol, from there.
What could go wrong?
Yeah.
Bloomberg News cybersecurity and tech reporter Katrina Manson visited a farm in Maryland to get a firsthand look at how these swarms work. I started by asking her what she saw.
Well, we drew up at this farm in Maryland. So imagine a field of young green corn. But the thing that immediately catches your eye is there's a Cold War era tank in the middle of it. And at the other end, there's a khaki tent and an operator who demonstrated for me a drone swarm attack. And at the touch of a button, 5 quite small drones went up from the ground into the air, and you instantly get that buzzing sound, which for any of your viewers who have been following the war in Ukraine, that is the haunting sound of this huge land war. And very quickly, the operator chooses pixels on the side of the tank for where they want these drones to attack. And at one touch of a button, all 5 drones essentially turn into missiles and autonomously attack. And so very quickly, from the side, we saw all 5 drones attack that tank. They were actually loaded with, not with plastic explosives, as they've done before in a live experiment, but with chalk. So red chalk then exploded on the side of this tank.
To simulate
that they were on target and that the 5 drones were talking to each other. And
here's a tank.
Yes.
And we'll see.
The company bought that for just over $100,000 and then trailered it from the Midwest.
So the idea is that would be this coordinated attack and it would blow up the tank.
Yes. And the technology, I mean, people have seen drones before. These drones have been around for a while.
Yeah, what is it different from the drone shows that we see that are entertainment?
So those entertainment ones, each drone is centrally controlled and given a precise GPS coordinate exactly where to go. And they're extraordinary feats of, imagine synchronized swimming.
Right.
Everyone is pre-programmed to do exactly the same thing. The technology about drone swarms has been hard because although you can put a lot of different drones up in the air at the same time, the thing that operators in Ukraine and elsewhere have been trying to work out is GPS jamming. Now, that means that the communication to the drone might be interrupted by the adversary, by the enemy, and so you lose control of your drone. In the Ukraine, what they did was they discovered actually keeping that connection to the drone with a cable, with a fiber optic cable. So when the controller is controlling it, they have direct control over one drone. Now, in a scenario like a Chinese attack on Taiwan and defending that, cables aren't going to cut it.
Right.
But there could easily be GPS jamming. So one of the things that people are trying to develop is autonomous drone swarming. So the operator would control multiple drones with one controller. And if that cuts, the drones can also talk to each other and attack either a preloaded target or go find a target using AI, which really is this very futuristic and highly unreliable tech at the moment.
You know, there are a lot of concerns about that when it comes to autonomous drones. You know, because what if they get the target wrong, or what if there's a misfunction? How are they figuring out that? I mean, that's got to be one of the problems or one of the obstacles they still have to figure out.
I spoke to a US defense official about exactly this, and they have this effort that they launched at the beginning of this year called SwarmForge. So the company I visited, Auterion, and 26 others are competing now in the third heat in September. But at the previous heat, these are experiments. They're expected to go wrong. They're learning from each one. But the defense official explained to me this key thing, which I think is giving them pause and everybody else.
Right.
The drone was sent out to look in what is called a boundary boxed area for targets for military vehicles. And it was supposed to distinguish between military and non-military civilian vehicles. Instead, what happened is the AI on those drones started looking in the car park, far away from where they were supposed to be looking, and found white Chevy trucks, civilian, and suggested those as targets. Now, that's exactly not what should be happening. And so the defense official thought that what had happened is the AI has been trained previously on previous data of white Toyota Hiluxes in the desert, all the wars the US has previously been fighting. And the AI is reading off that old data, doing pattern recognition, which is what it's meant to do, but then not sticking to the new rules. And so that is something those companies have to go back and work on. And I think it's key, as people are so concerned about autonomous warfare, for me it was an insight that the Defense Department is spending time distinguishing between military and civilian vehicles and not being satisfied.
We just have a couple minutes left, and I think about this company that you write about, Auterion. I mean, they started out doing delivery drones for Walmart, pivoted right when it came to the Russian invasion in Ukraine. The founder of the company, I believe it was. So it's like warfare has definitely shifted in terms of the type of vehicles people want to use or the type of weapons. And it does sound like it's not just a U.S. thing of making them increasingly more autonomous. That's a global thing, though, and we've already seen it.
Yeah, it's a global thing. Auterion says these strikes have been used in Ukraine autonomously. The first swarms, the Pentagon is trying to get to, they're already experimenting with teens. They hope to get to hundreds, but obviously the US is concerned what China is able to do, what Russia is able to do.
Right.
Israel is, many of the companies actually developing this tech are Israeli, so there are multiple countries that are ahead and experimenting with this tech. Auterion was doing defense contracts right from the beginning, but they've really scaled up and shifted and no longer do deliveries for Walmart. So it is a changing feature of war, but also a changing feature of how tech is used.
Katrina, when you see this, what just really strikes you? This is what you do, this world. You dig into whether it's artificial intelligence, generative AI, just how technology is advancing and how it's impacting how we fight wars. What struck you?
I think really it's the mismatch. You have the Secretary General of the United Nations saying machines that have the discretion to kill people without human control are morally repugnant. And then you have this technology essentially existing today. And so that debate, that discussion is happening often without an understanding of, sometimes the proponents of it would argue the conditions of war, and the campaigners against it would argue the real risks that this whole technology goes tremendously wrong. And watching that and watching the experiments always, for me, encourages me to look for the concrete examples of what goes right and what goes wrong.
Would you say, though, bottom line, that, I mean, at this point, everyone seems to say there's going to be a human element to it?
Yes, US defense policy is the commander verifies the target. That is still part of US policy. That is still the way these drones are working. Today. But the same defense official I spoke to who explained how that process works said that if there are human lives at risk, they should carry on using human verification for a target. But there is a scenario, the official told me, where you would have drone-on-drone attacks, and there will be too many targets for a single human to select, and at that point, the drones need to do the attacking. That's their view.
As I said, new era of warfare in a big way. Katrina Manson, thank you as always. Great story. We highly recommend everybody check it out. It's on the Bloomberg and at Bloomberg.com. Katrina, thanks.
Thanks for having me.
It's not scary at all.
What could possibly go wrong? No, I mean, increasingly, it's no longer just, men or women confronting each other in warfare. It's increasingly technology, and we know that. And to some extent, some of that can be good in terms of limiting human casualties, or not necessarily, but it's changing dramatically.
The AI stories we've been talking about recently with the jailbreaks that we've seen in models from OpenAI, from Anthropic, they're breaking out of the sandbox. But in this case, they're weaponized, which is what brings everyone to the Terminator conclusion. Has Skynet been realized?
And the question is, when they do that, they're testing, some of the models in terms of the sandbox. But can they fully be tested? Can you fully test these types of technologies to ensure that if they are making decisions on their own?
Pickup trucks in the parking lot next door, it might already be too late for that story.
All of this stuff is only as good as the data you put into it.
Unbelievable.
Just saying. Anyway, Katrina Manson, she's a killer around here.
Reminding us we work with the smartest people in the world.
Yeah, we really do.
Great.
Speaking of smart people, let's get a check on some of the top headlines on this Saturday. We're back over to Lisa Mateo. Lisa.
You got it, guys. And let's start overseas. And this is the death toll after an Israeli airstrike on southern Lebanon. It continues to rise. Now 11 people have been killed. State-run national news agency had said the attack targeted the home of the edge of the village in Ansar. It's one of the deadliest strikes since a truce between Israel and Hezbollah went into effect in June. Hawaii's Big Island bracing for a direct hit from tropical storm Lala. Forecasters say it'll bring heavy rain that can cause destructive flooding and strong winds that can even fuel wildfires. Now, if Lala makes landfall as a hurricane, it would be the first to do so since 1871. And a powerful magnitude 7.7 earthquake has struck off the coast of Indonesia, killing at least 38 people. The quake had collapsed buildings and homes. It also triggered a landslide. A tsunami warning, it was initially issued, but later lifted. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi promised to reach out to younger citizens after widespread student protests. And he renewed his pledge to make the country a developed nation within 2 decades.
In the coming 7 to 8 years, India will be starting 5 7 to 8 semiconductor plants.
2047 tak
By 2047, India envisions having 100 gigawatt nuclear power. In this decade, we aim to start 5 new nuclear reactors.
Well, Modi's comments, they came during a speech to mark the anniversary of India's independence from British rule in 1947. Joe and Carol, over to you.
Thank you so much. International relief is pouring in to help the victims from the earthquake in Colombia. What is still needed? The impact on coffee prices is a big part of this here in the U.S. It's Bloomberg This Weekend.
Thanks for joining us live on Bloomberg This Week, and I'm Lisa Mateo. Let's update you on today's top stories. Alibaba now has the world's #1 artificial intelligence model. Its open weight models have accumulated more than 3 billion global downloads in the past 6 months, surpassing Meta, Google, and its domestic peers in China. Well, Anthropic telling prospective investors its second quarter revenue jumped at least 14-fold versus the same period a year ago. According to documents seen by Bloomberg, the company reported a preliminary revenue figure of more than $11.5 billion in its latest completed quarter. And sources telling Bloomberg Jane Street posted roughly $15 billion of losses in July, its first monthly slump in about a decade. It comes as AI-focused hedge funds, situational awareness drag down asset prices across equity markets. Jane Street invests in situational awareness and has made wrong way bets in Asian equity markets. In sports, the PGA Tour's first FedEx Cup playoffs continue with the FedEx St. Jude Championship. It's taking place in Memphis, topping the leaderboard. Scotty Scheffler at 11 under par. He's followed by Victor Hovland and Sung Jae Im. They're tied at 8 under par. Well, the owners of the New York Knicks, they move one step closer to a New York Rangers spin-off. Madison Square Garden Sports said it's filed a public registration statement for the new Rangers company with the SEC. MSG Sports said it expects the spin-off to be completed by the end of October, and that's around the same time as the NBA season begins.
Not like you're watching.
There you go, guys.
A little bit of a Knicks fan over
sports we're talking about
Yeah.
this morning. They just keep coming.
A lot of stuff.
Lisa, thank you. As Indonesia assesses the damage from that massive 7.7 magnitude earthquake, rescue efforts are continuing half a world away in Colombia.
They certainly are. Nearly 300 people died in Monday's 7.4 magnitude quake. For an update, let's head to the capital of Bogota, where Mia Dahl is, Bloomberg News Latin American reporter. Good to have you here, Mia. What can you tell us about the latest in terms of the rescue efforts and where that sits right now?
The rescue efforts continue in Western Colombia. So we've already passed the critical 72-hour rescue window, but we hear from rescue teams that they still continue to hear signs of life underneath the rubble. So they continue to search. And we know from a recent earthquake in neighboring Venezuela that it's possible to find people many days after the earthquake strike. So actually there they found people alive up to 29 days. So we will see rescue efforts continue these days, but they will increasingly then become replaced by recovery and reconstruction efforts.
Well, rescue and recovery is, of course, the priority here, Mia, but we also are concerned about the economic impact on Colombia, where we understand that coffee exports have partially resumed. What's the status?
That's correct. So initially, there was a big shock to coffee exports. Colombia is the world's second biggest coffee grower. Yeah. So anything that happens to coffee here will really affect world prices. And that happened after Monday's earthquake, primarily because of damage to infrastructure. The roads, the ports that are supposed to transport coffee out of Colombia were damaged. And that created an initial shock. We saw a spike in futures of Arabica coffee. They had already increased by 30% since June because of weather conditions related to El Niño. But then we saw a multiple week high on Wednesday when they came up to $3.2 per pound. Now they're recovering because those infrastructure routes are starting to recover as well. And we are likely to see a normalization of that industry, but there will be very severe impacts to the wider economy.
Well, let's talk about that. And I also think about the new leadership, the president who just came in. Mia, often, unfortunately, crisis moments are true tests of leadership. What can you tell us about that front and how that's going so far?
So the new president in Colombia really just started the job. He was sworn in as a president on Friday last week, and Monday was his first day on the job, and he came into this massive crisis. He was already facing a number of crises, a fiscal crisis, a security crisis, a health crisis, an energy crisis. But then this earthquake struck at 7:30 in the morning, and it created a whole new set of crises for him. He's not an experienced politician. He used to work as a litigation lawyer. He also has a rum brand and is more known for his businesses and lawyer work. But he's now being put to test with this.
I find it really fascinating, Mia, when we consider the international response, that Colombia did not want the help of certain neighbors. What can you tell us about that?
That has created a lot of criticism. So initially, a lot of neighboring countries or countries across Latin America offered help, including Mexico, which has a lot of experience in these rescue missions and have been deployed in over 90 different countries in the world. But the president rejected those offers for rescue teams. He instead said that he would receive rescue teams from Israel, El Salvador, the United States, which are ideological allies, unlike Mexico, which created a lot of speculation and criticism as to whether he was making this like a political gamble for rescue efforts.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Thank you for the update. That is Mia Dahl. She's Latin America government reporter in Bogota, Colombia,
Thank you, Mia,
with the latest on that. Well, this year's Super El Niño is taking a heavy toll from erratic Indian rain to intense European heat. Weather extremes are threatening crops, supply chains, and lives. Bloomberg Originals looks at how bad it could all get.
The cyclical weather phenomenon known as El Niño has returned.
Wildfires in Europe.
More than 300,000 people have fled their homes in France and Spain.
Catastrophic flooding in India, or even New York City. Weather extremes in our world are becoming more frequent.
So scientists are worried about this El Niño for two reasons. One is the scale of this El Niño. It's perhaps the biggest they have seen in recent history. And when it is coming, which is in a world that is already 1.4 degrees Celsius hotter as a result of human-caused climate change.
El Niño doesn't roll around that often, so it's difficult to totally anticipate what the effects will be. But this has the potential to be a historic event in terms of its power.
The economic toll this El Niño will take may not be known for years to come, but looking into the past gives us some ideas.
In our daily lives, the oceans play a crucial role. They can drive our climate and our weather. El Niño taught us all about that.
The El Niño that ended in 1998 had a major effect on global economies. The damage was about $5.7 trillion. It rippled for 5 years after the event ended. Losses from the 2015-2016 El Niño also ran into the trillions, and kind of forecasting suggests we'll see that again.
And you can watch the whole story at Bloomberg.com/videos. So, you know, you think about, we watch climate change, we feel it. We certainly had some of the fires and the smoke coming down from Canada this year.
Now it's Europe's turn.
Exactly. And it's the extremes. It's a lot of rain, it's drought, it's high temperatures. But El Niño expected to be the worst in at least 76 years. And we're talking about, I don't want to go, it impacts humans and their lives, but there's also an immense financial toll.
Yeah, this is a big economic story when you consider the cost of food already rising, thanks to so many issues, including the war in Iran, the cost of energy, diesel prices, lifting prices for everything that gets to our tables. And you add a weather phenomenon like this, and it can become a lot more complicated. In the case of Colombia, as we were just discussing, my goodness, it's terrible what they're going through there. I mean, we're talking about hundreds of lives and, well, I guess millions of families impacted here, already dealing with the impacts of climate change, and you add an earthquake to this. It comes through the supply chain on the other end, as Mia told us, and that's the price of coffee.
And we know these tough things have happened over the years, but it's the frequency and how extreme they are that it's really hard, and the impact is certainly felt longer, and it's much more severe.
Yeah, absolutely. These are all factors that play into the markets. When Carol and I get back to it on Monday, we'll be talking about these things. Commodity prices are a huge driver in decisions that investors are making now when it comes to stocks and bonds. You can't hide from it.
It's interesting. We don't talk so much about alternative energy. It's kind of been politically not the right thing to do, but increasingly look around the world, those investments are being made because they're thinking about fossil fuels and the impact it continues to have.
For sure.
Certainly
That's why
on environment.
we've been watching solar stocks bounce back for that reason recently. When we come back on Bloomberg this weekend, we'll test our we're going to do this this game again?
Come on.
I failed. I lost the whole thing last time.
It's not multiple choice.
You're going to win.
No,
Lisa will
I'm not.
give us the pointed news quiz next. Only here on Bloomberg This Weekend. This is up to me now for this weekend's pointed news. I thought you ran the because I'm going to lose it. Lisa Mateo is here with the pointed news quiz, which, Carol, is not multiple choice. I thought they changed the rules.
No, you played this in the newsroom?
We do the Bloomberg quiz,
yes,
which we
correct.
love,
The
and
quiz,
we're all super competitive. Pointed to, I like, but all right, go.
Okay. Well, let me explain to you guys how it works, okay? Because you're new. Okay, so here we go. You have 3 groups of chips in front of you, right? Each group is 10. There's 3 categories. So when I explain to you each category, you're going to place your bets. Okay. So if you think I'm all in on category 1, you might want to put like 20 on category 1.
Okay. Has anyone gone all in on a category?
Yes, David Gura has done it, and it failed miserably. So it depends if you feel really comfortable.
Okay.
And then you write your answers. I'm going to ask you a question. You write your answers on the whiteboard. You flip them, and then we see who gets it right and who gets it wrong.
Do you tell us the 3 categories?
I do.
At the top?
Are you ready?
And then we can decide?
Yes. Okay.
Go.
Here are the first. Okay, the first category is delivery. Second category is online dating. And third category is arts and crafts.
Ooh.
So what do you think? How are you going to go even across the board?
Delivery?
What is
delivery.
Okay.
Like, you know, like things getting delivered to your place.
All right. Well, I don't have anything on the middle category. I'm going to...
I can't say too much.
So I'm going to
give it away.
I'm splitting my bet between the first and third category. I have nothing on online dating.
Nothing on
Yeah, I've been married for 30 years. What do I... Okay.
What do you know?
I'm just doing 10, 10, and 10.
10, 10, 10?
All right.
Yeah, let's
Skip
just
it
play
even.
it.
That strategy actually works.
Yes. All right.
We'll see. Okay. So the first category is delivery. Let's get to your question.
Okay.
You ready? Okay. Wait. Mayor Mandami, he is backing legislation to force which company to directly employ its third-party delivery drivers? What is the name of that company that Mayor Mandami is backing legislation?
Doesn't it have to be?
Force them
is
to
that
directly
easy
employ
or
their
am I dumb?
I don't know.
I know.
Well, maybe both.
I'm going to go there. We're going to go there.
Yep.
Okay, go.
You got it? Okay, flip it. What do you got, Joe?
Oh, we're not ready.
Oh.
Amazon. Correct. You guys.
So
You're off to
wait
a
minute.
good start.
Are you going easy on us? I don't want you to do the lame version for us.
No.
They apparently had a meeting and they're not that bright. So make it easy.
Let Joe and Carol win.
Yes, exactly.
They're not like David and
They're
Christine.
fragile egos.
Okay, so I have my eraser.
You
here.
were in the lead,
Do we
Joe,
erase?
because you put 20 on there.
Yes. Okay. I love this
Sorry,
game.
Carol.
What about we girls, like bonding here?
I know. Christina yells at me all the time.
Really?
All right, do we erase now?
All right, so
my-
erase.
Okay, so.
All right, we're going to category 2.
Nice job,
online
buddy.
dating.
Thank you.
Okay.
Look at me.
Nice.
So Joe has nothing on online dating.
Yeah.
Carol has 10 on online dating. Here is your question.
I've been married for a million years, and I don't know why.
You're going to get this. You're going to get this. Okay. Which dating app is changing its central rule, no longer requiring women to send the message first?
I heard Charlie Pellet do that story, and I had never heard of it, so I don't know what it is.
Wait, what's it called?
What's the name?
I know about swiping.
Right.
Think of it.
Sounds like?
Write the name of a dating app down and see if you get it right.
I know.
But this one, think it requires women to send a message first, okay? So it no longer is doing that. Women.
It's pretty smart, actually.
Okay, I'm not going to cheat, but but I can see. So move it away.
Yeah. Do you have something?
I don't. I do.
I'm just doing. You made me write something.
Okay, what did you write? Amazon. You can't write Amazon.
Wait, I think you. It's from the last question. Is that it?
No, it's Bumble.
Bumble.
Yes. Bumble.
Right,
See, now I feel
their
like I
stock
should
price
have known
declined 57% over the past year.
Thank God I didn't bet on
I
it.
haven't been dating in a long time.
I know, but having women used to have to make the first move, but now they're not. I don't know. I would think I would be up for rejection. I don't know.
Wait, so what is the change?
The change is because on Bumble, women would make the first move and approach the man first, but now they don't have to do that. The men can approach the women first.
You mean like
because some women were feeling like, I don't want to put it out there because I'm going to get rejected.
We can't be counted on to take the initiative. And John's very glad you got that wrong.
I know.
Good job. Thanks.
Carol, you're not doing good. So what happens when you get it wrong? You give your chips to me.
You lost the... Oh,
so you give me those, and you got the first one wrong? No, you got the first one right. She's like, don't take my chips.
There's no way I'm going to do it.
Is the show over yet?
The house?
No, we have another category. Okay. Arts and crafts. Okay.
Arts and crafts.
Here's your question.
I think I know, because I remember talking about this story. But
this is a tough one, though.
Yeah.
Okay, consumers are spending more on crafting nowadays. What types of scrapbooking uses material? Usually, what type of scrapbooking uses material destined for the trash?
Ooh.
So what type of scrapbooking? It's a type of scrapbooking that people are using stuff that they used to throw out.
Really?
What is this scrapbooking called? I know, it's difficult. Do you scrapbook? No.
No.
No, Chris,
what is it?
I could say
called?
something. What is the type of scrapbooking called when you use materials that are destined for the trash? You're giving up. What do you? Don't put Amazon again. Recycling. Trash booking.
Is that it?
No.
Did
it's
you make that up and got it right?
It's a good one, but
That's
it is
a great
called
guess.
junk journaling.
Whoever,
All right.
really?
So Joe, you got that one wrong. So these are mine.
All right.
Okay.
I say
Carol, you
I got half my money.
You were
But
smart.
Joe is ahead of the game.
Ooh, do we do this on Sundays as well?
We have
done.
a bonus, quick bonus,
Oh,
okay?
here we go.
So
This is
Carol,
your
you
chance.
can get all of it if you get this right.
Okay, what?
Here we
Make it
go.
easy.
Chinese manufacturers account for 97% of shipments of which product made by companies like Agabot and Unitree Robotics. Agabot.
Oh, wait.
We know
okay.
this. We know this.
This category
Is it as
China.
easy as I think?
Wait, what if we both get it right? Who gets the chips?
Darn it, that's never happened yet.
Okay, are you ready? Are you
Wow.
ready?
Yeah.
Ready?
Check your cards.
Drones. No, humanoid robots, guys.
No, actually,
Robots
Lisa,
are drones.
that is wrong. So give us the chips.
Do we do this
You guys
again on
did-
Sunday, or is this
You
a
did
Saturday
very
thing?
well, though. It was fun.
Yeah, it's
Do
fun
we
when
get
you
to do
win.
it again? No, I guess there's only one a week, right?
No, we do it only on Saturdays.
Saturdays, all right.
Yes.
My
But you
record is
can play
intact.
at home. Bloomberg.com/pointed. It's also on the Bloomberg Business app.
It's drones.
Yes. It's not drones. It's humanoid
drones.
robots.
Lisa, check your notes. It's drones.
I give up.
All right. This has been fun. We're going to come back tomorrow and do this again.
Are we really doing that again?
Yeah.
We're doing
but
this again,
yeah,
not the
this
game.
again.
No, we're doing this whole show
We're going to try
again.
and lighten it up a little bit.
Hey, Byron Donalds is going to be with us tomorrow ahead of the Florida state primary. We'll also talk to California Attorney General Rob Bonta. Have a great Saturday.